Chapter 1830. In the free war zone, 4 ships from the Wuji Heaven appeared one after another. This time, the one overseeing the Wuji Heaven was none other than Bei Xianbing, who had led the group to the king perished. Maybe it was because they were overconfident, or for some other reason, but the Wuji Heaven's fleet didn't move very frequently. On one of the ships, a young man was cultivating on the deck. His body was shining with golden light, and terrifying intent descended from time to time. This person was Li Xinghen, a top genius of the Wuji Heaven who had awakened the path of invincibility. His strength was at the peak of the half-step monarch realm in the Wuji Heaven. Last time, Li Xinghen had thought he was just going to steal a few keys. Why would he need to do something so simple? Who would have thought that an expert on the path of invincibility would appear in the king perished? Therefore, Li Xinghen didn't want to miss the martial emperor's inheritance this time. Why were the Wuji Heaven's ships moving so slowly? It wasn't because they couldn't run fast, but because they wanted to wait and see if the top 10 pirate groups would come to rob them. This was the confidence of the immortal palaces. Among the immortal palaces, some monarchs brought their people directly, some sneaked in, and some quickly went to the martial emperor city after entering the free war zone. Only a few dared to travel slowly in the free war zone. The Wuji Heaven was one of the bold immortal palaces. Xinghen. Bei Xianbing appeared behind Li Xinghen without him noticing. She said, "Xinghen, it doesn't matter if we can meet the kid on the path of invincibility this time. I heard that there's a bronze door in the martial emperor's inheritance. Find a way to get in no matter what." Li Xinghen said, "Uncle Master, what's so special about that bronze door?" Bei Xianbing said, "I don't know. I've seen that door once before, but I couldn't enter it. I've never heard of anyone doing so. The Black Impermanence kid entered the king perished a few months ago and came out safely, which means that it's at least safe. There must be a great opportunity in there." Li Xinghen nodded. "Yes, Uncle Master. The martial emperor's inheritance only reopened after 1,300 years. Naturally, I won't let go of this opportunity." Bei Xianbing said, "You're lucky. It's been 3,200 years since the last time, and you still managed to kill a demi-king. So, to be able to make this trip is already not bad." Li Xingchen. After that, Bei Xianbing ordered, "Stay here for 2 hours. If no pirate groups arrive in 2 hours, then there is no need to wait. Just go straight to Martial Emperor City." Suddenly, hundreds of thousands of kilometers ahead, a large ship was floating on the sea. A figure wielding a pair of sabers stood on the mast and looked over. Beneath his feet, a flag of skulls fluttered wantonly. Bei Xianbing sneered, "Is this guy's brain damaged?" Li Xingchen narrowed his eyes. "It's the Avenger. Who would have thought that such a pirate group would come to stop my limitless sky? Martial uncle, let me do it." Bei Xianbing sneered, "Do I need to do anything to deal with such a small fry?" Li Xingchen suddenly stood up. "You can watch the battle, Martial uncle." When the two sides were 20,000 kilometers away, everyone on the 4 big ships of the limitless sky saw the Avenger. At this moment, with a thought, the Avenger was taken into Forge the Universe. Swish, he held his kitchen knife horizontally. "This is a robbery. Pay up." To be honest, at this moment, on the big ships of the limitless sky, everyone looked at each other as if looking at a fool. Someone was speechless. "Is this guy's brain okay? He single-handedly stopped the fleet of the limitless sky?" Someone shook his head. "Is this the so-called Avenger? He's obviously a fool. Even if there are no kings in the limitless sky, Li Xingchen is not someone he can deal with, right?" Someone grinned. "This kid is dead. He may not know what he is doing." When they were only 3,000 kilometers away, Li Xinghen raised his hand, and the ships of the limitless sky slowly stopped. Li Xinghen stepped in the air, wearing a gilded ancient robe, and there was a golden light on his forehead. His aura fluctuated, and the surroundings were full of sharp metal qi. Li Xinghen said, Avenger, Han Fei? Han Fei curled his lips. Who are you? I don't know you. Give me money. Li Xingqian's expression didn't change. How dare you single-handedly stop the ship of the limitless sky? You are very bold. I heard that your combat power is very strong. In that case, let's have a try. Han Fei shrugged. You talk too much. In order to wait for you, I missed a meal. How can I give up without a few million yuan of compensation? Li Xingqian's body was shining with golden light, and his invincible fighting intent was revealed. A pair of strange gloves appeared on his hands, as if there were hidden weapons on each finger. When the two stood facing each other, after a full minute, the two almost attacked at the same time. Swish! The two knives in Han Fei's hands slashed out a dazzling knife light, breaking through the void and crossing thousands of kilometers, going straight at Li Xinghan. Li Xinghan's eyes shone with golden light, and he just moved slightly in front of the ship, letting the knife light approach him, but it suddenly exploded. The rolling waves shook the hull back dozens of kilometers. Terrifying huge waves rolled back in the sky. And after this blow, a layer of golden light barrier that protected the ship was completely shattered. The wind around Li Xinghan was no longer something that ordinary venerables could resist. After feeling Han Fei's blow, the corners of Li Xinghan's mouth curled up slightly. Interesting. You almost reached the Pioneer Sea realm. Unfortunately, it's still not enough. And Han Fei was slightly surprised. Is this person also on the invincible realm? Although Han Fei hadn't used the power of the Great Path yet, this person was definitely not an ordinary person to be able to block his blow so easily. Han Fei immediately knew who this person was. He was the only person in the limitless sky who had embarked on the invincible realm, and could also be called the strongest powerhouse in the limitless sky. Suddenly, Li Xinghan raised his hand. At the moment when Li Xinghan raised his hand, Han Fei suddenly felt a trace of crisis. He appeared on the other side with a Big Dipper. However, at the moment when Han Fei appeared, a golden thread moved extremely fast and appeared in front of Han Fei almost in an instant. Han Fei didn't move, and the coiled turtle array suddenly appeared in front of him. Clink! Crack! Although the coiled turtle array only gave Han Fei a short time, it was enough for Han Fei to raise his hand and condense a knife. When this knife was launched, a swish resounded between heaven and earth. Han Fei just felt that there was a silk thread that broke through the void and appeared in front of him in an instant. Han Fei curled his lips. Infinite phantom silk? It looks quite ordinary. Song Kaiyuan said that this infinite phantom silk was obtained by the master of the Wuji Palace in the Imperial Palace and later given to Li Xinghan. Combined with Li Xinghan's invincible realm, this silk thread could burst out terrifying lethality. It could be said that no one in the entire limitless sky was more suitable for this treasure than Li Xinghan. Of course, this infinite phantom silk was naturally a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Just now, Han Fei's knife seemed to have swung the silk thread away, but in fact, it just slashed out along the silk thread and made a sound of friction with the silk thread. The next moment, Han Fei tilted his head. Li Xingqian was about to make a move, when his face suddenly changed slightly. He left the big ship and raised his hand to punch. Bam! There were two consecutive roars, and the sea was dented. Li Xingqian was surprised. Where did this attack come from? He didn't see Han Fei at all. Could this attack have appeared out of thin air? Huh! Even Bei Xianbing couldn't help but frown. Even she didn't know where the two attacks just now came from. One was a knife light and the other was a soul-splitting knife. To put it bluntly, few people on the Wuji Palace's ships could block this attack. Fortunately, Li Xinghan took action. Otherwise, the others might not be Han Fei's match. Bei Xianbing said, "Finish it quickly. This kind of tentative attack can't dig out the opponent's strength." Li Xingqian nodded, and with a swish, he turned into an extremely fast ray of light. Fuse! Han Fei directly fused Little Black and Little White. The moment the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, he also activated his Dao. Bei Xianbing suddenly stood up. Yin Yang divine eyes? At that moment, Han Fei raised his hand, and the blade of hope appeared in his hand. The two knives slashed again. This time, it was no longer a tentative attack, but an attack with the Tao. Wuji storm. Li Xinghen appeared in midair, and around his body, tens of millions of threads between tangible and intangible rotated and intertwined. Bm boom! In the deafening explosion, Li Xinghen's body turned into golden threads of light, scattering in all directions. However, how could this escape Han Fei's eyes? Han Fei clearly felt the power of the fusion of spiritual beasts just now. In an instant, this person escaped instead of completely blocking Han Fei's attack. At this moment, the two yin-yang transmigration knives both reached the Wuji Palace's ship. When the golden light intertwined, Li Xinghen revealed his body and he said solemnly, "Did you use a secret method?" Li Xinghen felt that Han Fei's strength was several times stronger than before. This kind of leap was too big. This meant that Han Fei's combat power at this moment was far beyond that of a king who had just entered the Pioneer Sea state. Li Xinghen thought it was a secret method, so he retreated. He was going to get the inheritance, not to fight a life-and-death battle at this moment. At this moment, Bei Xianbing suddenly took action. He stretched out his hand and clenched, and the yin-yang transmigration knives in front of the ship shattered. Bei Xianbing said leisurely, "Provoking a king is not under the protection of the martial emperor city. Boy, who gave you the courage to pick a fight with the Wuji Palace?" First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1831. Li Xinghen immediately gave up the battle and fled back as fast as he could when Han Fei burst out his abnormal power. Or rather, he retreated temporarily, but he didn't think he was defeated. He just felt that Han Fei was digging his own grave. Increasing his strength with a secret method at the beginning of the battle was bound to be a burden on his body. In the long run, this person's achievements and potential would be limited. Because their strength was not on the same level, Li Xinghen had no desire to fight, so he gave up and let Bei Xianbing do it. Han Fei provoked them first and took the initiative to rob the Wuji Heaven. In this case, Bei Xianbing could have taken action. Just now, she just wanted Li Xinghen and Han Fei to have a fight. Now, seeing that Han Fei unleashed the power of the Sea Expansion Realm, she certainly planned to take action. On the Wuji Heaven's ship, those who could come here were all the top heavenly talents of the Wuji Heaven. Therefore, many people had already understood what was going on with the scene before them. Only a few people were shocked. Even the strongest person under the Sea Expansion Realm in the Wuji Heaven was no match for Han Fei? The Avengers were quite strong. Someone was shocked. If the king didn't take action, wouldn't Han Fei be invincible under the Sea Expansion Realm? At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on the front. In their opinion, Han Fei had no chance of winning against Bei Xian. Someone shook his head. This person will definitely die. He can't survive. Someone looked solemn. Is this person using the legendary yin-yang divine eyes? If so, then he... Someone gasped. Someone from the legendary yin-yang heaven has been born? Bei Xianbing stood proudly in the void and smiled. I'm very curious. Only the yin-yang heaven has the yin-yang divine eyes, right? After 80,000 years you finally came out. Han Fei smiled and said, "Yes. It's time for me to come out and settle the score with you." Settle the score? As if she had heard something funny, Bei Xianbing showed a disdainful expression. Who? You? Boy, have you become a king? As she spoke, Bei Xianbing raised her hand. As she raised her hand, tens of thousands of golden light spots appeared in the void. Whoosh, whoosh, the speed of those light spots was even faster than the speed of Li Xinghen's infinite phantom silk. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Han Fei's body moved in the void, and in an instant, there were hundreds of shadows. If you could freeze the image in that instant, you would see that the golden dots were small insects. However, because they were too fast, there was no time to see their data. Huh! Bei Xianbing, who was attacking Han Fei, suddenly tilted her head and sensed something behind her. With a single thought, the frost claw appeared in his hand. With a flip of his hand, he waved it 4 times. Bang, 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 bang. Although Bei Xianbing had attacked 4 times casually, the power she had unleashed was beyond everyone's imagination. The surface of the sea collapsed into a huge whirlpool. Bei Xianbing squinted her eyes and said, "Interesting, but you are still not strong enough." Humph! Bei Xian snorted coldly and disappeared from the spot. In the next moment, he had already appeared in the middle of a field of obscure light spots. Han Fei was going to use the star teleportation technique, but he suddenly realized that he couldn't keep up with her speed. Han Fei found that, except for his eyes, neither his body nor his soul could keep up with Bei Xianbing's attack rhythm. The moment Bei Xianbing moved, Han Fei sensed it. Bei Xianbing pressed her hand, and there was a loud explosion. In the void, a gray mist appeared. In the mist, Han Fei was nowhere to be seen. Bei Xianbing's speed was extremely fast. The first thing he did was to avoid the fog. Even so, his hand that slapped Han Fei was still stained. Bei Xianbing frowned in disgust. Her nose and mouth were all disgusted. What the hell is this? Why is it so stinky? Of course, as a challenger, Bei Xianbing certainly couldn't show it openly. He waved his hand and dispersed the gray mist. Then he said casually, "The heir of the Yin-Yang heaven has appeared." Interesting. He has appeared before the sea expansion realm. It seems that the barbarian land is not a good place after all. At this moment, Li Xinghen, who had just retreated, said, "Senior uncle, who is that Han Fei?" Bei Xianbing said casually, "He has shown up so many times in the Martial Emperor City. He can't hide it anymore. When we reach the Martial Emperor City, we just need to buy some intelligence resources, and we will know who he is." Speaking of which, just as Han Fei was attacking the Everlasting Sky Fleet alone, the Intelligence Center in Martial Emperor City suddenly released a bombshell. The reason was that some people who had been robbed by the Avenger came to investigate the Avenger's information about Han Fei. Originally, the information about Han Fei's identity could only be deduced from the information. It wasn't difficult for someone with a mind to speculate about it. However, the result of speculation was not as clear as a direct conclusion. But just now, the Intelligence Center of the Martial Emperor City directly put up a sign saying that the Avenger's identity had been revealed. This price was 500,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones per piece, or it could be exchanged with resources of the same price. 500,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones, for the experts of the immortal palaces and the thugs who lived in the Martial Emperor City, was not a lot of money, just a little expensive. It could be said that those who were interested didn't care about this money. Almost at the moment this intelligence was put up, more than 30 pieces were sold. Among them, none of the top 10 pirate groups were missed. They bought this intelligence as soon as possible. Immediately afterward, those who had been robbed by Han Fei, even if they didn't know, immediately bought it. As for the super forces such as the Mermaid Clan, the 100 Demon Clan, and the Seabed Human Clan, after knowing that a force was rising, how could they miss it? Therefore, Han Fei sent someone to sell this intelligence for 20 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. In an instant, 15 million had been transferred to the transaction center. He was about to get back the cost. This speed of making money was really terrifying. At this moment, many people were studying the intelligence. In the intelligence, a lot of information about Han Fei had been connected. The intelligence began. Han Fei, the captain of the Avengers, was the current successor of the Yin-Yang Heaven who had disappeared for 80,000 years. He had the Yin-Yang Divine Eyes and the Gemini Divine Technique. His identity was confirmed. With just this sentence, the people who bought the intelligence knew that it was worth it this time. After the intelligence came out, only an hour later, another piece of news suddenly came out. The source of the news was the gambling house of the martial monarch city. Someone said, "The captain of the Avengers hunted down 4 of the Limitless Heavens ships alone and defeated the strongest expert below the Limitless Heavens sea-splitting realm, Li Xinghan. Later, he fought head-on with Bei Xianbing, the king of the Wuji Heaven, and was defeated in one move. Now he has fled." As soon as this news came out, half of the martial emperor city was directly set off a turbulent storm. The Wuji Heaven was an existence that even the top 10 pirate groups were unwilling to touch. A small unknown pirate group dared to rob them? And the King ran away? Everyone felt that this person was really bold. After this news came out, within 100 minutes, the 36 Black Heavens, the top 10 pirate groups, and various forces all had a copy of the intelligence on the Avengers. And at this time, the intelligence on the Avengers had already been sold for 25 million supreme-grade spirit stones. The trading center had already recovered its capital and made a huge profit. Song Kaiyuan and the others, who were secretly watching all this, looked at each other. Is this the king efficiency of the martial emperor city? Song Kaiyuan said, "Lu Ran, go collect the money and buy a copy of the intelligence on the Avengers. We will give it some advice." Lu Ran said in surprise, "The intelligence is provided by us. Do we also need to go read it?" Song Kaiyuan, "Of course, the information we give out may be interpreted in another way under someone else's organization. So, we naturally need to read it. Go quickly." After saying this, Song Kaiyuan looked at Li Kaitian and said, "Go rent a private courtyard. Be spacious but low-key." An hour later, when Lu Ran and the others came to a courtyard built in the central part of the martial emperor city, near the downtown area, Song Kaiyuan said speechlessly, "Li Kaitian, do you have a wrong understanding of the word low-key?" Li Kaitian said, "Do you think it is easy to rent a house now? Most of the courtyards have been rented out. It's just that there are too many people coming this time. It costs 300,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones a month to rent this shabby place. It took me a lot of effort to rent it for 2 months with 500,000 top-grade spirit stones." Song Kaiyuan said, "Anyway, it's captain's money. Don't worry about it." At this time, Lu Ran said, "Stop talking nonsense. Look at this intelligence first. It's more complete than what I revealed." Everyone quickly looked at it. In addition to the first sentence directly revealing Han Fei's identity, there was a series of descriptions below. Han Fei, male. Bone age, within 1,000 years. Realm, half a king. Strength. Suspected to have a strange secret technique that allows him to burst out the combat power of the sea expansion realm in a short time. In his peak state, his strength is at least 80,000 wave. Speed and physique are all added. The secret technique can be maintained for about 10 to 20 minutes. Depending on the intensity of the battle, the duration will also change. Characteristics: good at disguise, Gemini divine technique, knife skills, physique comparable to that of a king, suspected to have an indestructible golden body. Great Tao. Suspected to have multiple Great Tao at the same time, including the Yin-Yang Great Tao, the Strength Great Tao, the Time Great Tao, the Space Great Tao identity. Suspected to be the current successor of Yin-Yang Heaven, the current Palace Master of Yin-Yang Heaven. Story 1. Half a year after the riot in the Savage Abyss, he fought with the Marauders and officially established the Avenger. At that time, Han Fei fought with the Crazy Four Kings and was defeated. However, in front of the Crazy Four Kings, he broke through the formation of ships and killed more than a dozen venerables. Story 2. In the place where the king died, he pretended to be the black and white ghosts, alias Fan Datong. Abducted the princess of the mermaids, suspected to have a portable small world, suspected to have the sea-quelling painting. Story 3. However, at the end of the story, there was a message. According to reliable sources, Han Fei once said that the mermaids can contact the world outside the chaotic sea. This news is still being confirmed. When the information is complete, we will release it as soon as possible. At present, the incomplete supplementary information is worth 1 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1832. Han Fei might be able to disguise himself, but after the series of battles in the chaotic Azure Sea, it was impossible that he didn't recognize any of his tactics. Since Song Kaiyuan was able to deduce Han Fei's identity, the Martial Emperor City would naturally be able to deduce more if they provided sufficient information. At this time, Han Fei's name immediately resounded in the circle of some powerhouses. After all, Han Fei's identity was eye-catching enough. Han Fei's secret techniques, divine skills, and indestructible golden body were all worth coveting. However, after Song Kaiyuan finished reading the report, his first reaction was, "No. Some information has been deliberately concealed." Song Kaiyuan said, "This time, although we tried our best not to display any special power, it's not hard to find out if someone wants to study it. However, there was no mention of our identities in this report." Mu Shui Cece. "I'm afraid no one noticed it by chance, right? We did disguise ourselves after all. Besides, anyone can be a pirate. Why can't our 4 palaces have someone who can be a pirate?" Song Kaiyuan shook his head slightly. "Coincidence? If even I could guess it, how could those experts not? Experts never believed in coincidences. Now that we've appeared and are so powerful, there's no reason for Martial Emperor City to ignore us. Moreover, the relationship between the captain and Shuizhan could be traced back to Lei Huitian in the initial investigation. If you really want to investigate carefully, this layer of connection can actually be broken through." Mu Shui Cece asked, "Senior brother, what do you mean? Are you saying that the information regarding Martial Emperor City is lacking?" Song Kaiyuan said, "I even think that the Martial Emperor City is protecting the captain. This level of intelligence is a disgrace to the Martial Emperor City." Mu Shi said, "That must be because our identities haven't been discovered yet, right? If we are completely exposed, won't our 4 great immortal palaces and Snow God Palace become the target of the chaotic vast sea?" Song Kaiyuan's eyes lit up. "That's right. Although in name, there were now 5 immortal palaces that were related to the captain. However, it was very likely that this relationship would be erased by the Martial Emperor City. I even suspect that the information about Captain's first appearance in Thunder Fire City has been quietly erased." Lu Ran's heart skipped a beat. "Later, I'll make another trip to the Information Exchange Center. We'll know once we investigate." Song Kaiyuan, "Go quickly." After only an hour, Lu Ran came back with a surprised look on her face. As soon as he entered, he heard Lu Ran say, "Brother Song is right. The details and rumors on the ship are completely untraceable. Even if you pay a lot of money, you won't be able to sell it." Song Kaiyuan narrowed his eyes and said, "That's right. However, why would Martial Emperor City take the initiative to help Captain? Is it for the safety of the 5 great immortal palaces, or is it purely to help the Captain?" Mu Shui Cece, "That doesn't make sense. Wu Emperor City was built later. When Yin Yang Heaven disappeared, there was no Martial Emperor City yet." Song Kaiyuan said, "That is, Martial Emperor City does not wish to see the humans of the 36 profound heavens killing each other." Li Kaitian hurriedly stopped him and said, "Wait, why did the 36 profound heavens kill each other after the captain was exposed to be in contact with our palaces? It's just a Yin Yang Heaven, there's no need to cause such a big mess, right?" Song Kaiyuan shook his head slightly. "This is a matter of choosing sides. Hiss. Or, was the last message that the captain gave us actually true?" Everybody looked at each other in bewilderment. In fact, when Han Fei asked Song Kaiyuan to sell his intelligence, he also gave Song Kaiyuan a piece of shocking intelligence. The intelligence read, "In the Age of Doom, the gods fought on the other side of the sea. That battle swept across the world for 3 years. The heavens cried and the great Tao collapsed. Every time the great Tao collapsed, it usually symbolized the fall of a god. Ever since then, the myriad of races became lawless, and the myriad of Taos returned to nothingness. After the fall of the gods, there was once a holy spirit who carried the oracle of the sea suppressing divine spirit and drafted a divine decree, ordering the Sea Clan to slaughter the myriad of races and reopen the primal chaos. The Sea Clan will have a large number of new gods who inherit the great Tao, and they will become the only masters of this world. Along with the god's decree, a strange technique appeared. The technique is unknown, but it can be used to become a venerable emperor. This technique was acquired by Chun Huangdian. This person secretly connected to the outside world of the chaotic ocean and has been cultivating for many years. It's very likely that he's hiding his strength, and he's suspected of wiping out the chaotic ocean. At the end of the intelligence, the source of the information was indicated, which was a private conversation between Han Fei and Xia Shaochan, the princess of the mermaids. In the eyes of Song Kaiyuan and the others, Han Fei was intentionally framing Chun Huangdian. After all, you abducted their princess, so they wanted to kill you. Wasn't that a given? However, if it was really a framing, the intelligence wouldn't be very credible. Even if Han Fei made up an awesome background, it wouldn't be of any use, right? Song Kaiyuan, who was rarely shocked, said, "What the captain said is true. It seems that all the rumors about the Age of Doom that the captain mentioned are true. That's easy to understand. The Martial Emperor City is probably protecting the captain for now and releasing the information so that someone can test it. They're watching in secret." Unfortunately, everyone asked, "What's wrong?" Song Kaiyuan said with an awful face, "Our intelligence was sold too cheaply. After the intelligence on the Avenger came out, they only spent 500,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones to learn more about the Avenger. However, when they saw the last supplementary information, all the races and pirate groups couldn't sit still anymore. The mermaids could collude with people outside the chaotic ocean? The news was released by the Martial Emperor City, so it must be very credible. Immediately, the intelligence center of the Martial Emperor City was in an uproar. People kept coming. Customers were received one after another. The usual big client had now become an ordinary client. Someone even shouted, "Give me a copy of the Avengers report. Give me one too. Me too." If Han Fei saw this scene, he might have shed tears. He only wanted to cause trouble. Even without the Martial Emperor's inheritance, he would have come to the Martial Emperor City. His purpose in coming to the Martial Emperor City was to cause trouble. To be more precise, to cause trouble for Chun Huangdian. If nothing went wrong, the guy would definitely be waiting for him at the entrance of the Savage Abyss. If he was lucky, he could escape. If he was unlucky, it was possible that the guy could find him. Han Fei knew that he hadn't passed the test yet. He would be too stupid to fight Chun Huangdian at this moment. After all, could a regular king project his projection to the yin-yang heaven? Obviously, he couldn't. Therefore, Chun Huangdian might be stronger than Han Fei thought. Since he couldn't beat him, and he couldn't fight him, he might as well let other people fight him. As long as that guy didn't have the energy to bother him. After the things in the Martial Emperor City were over, he would pick up his clone in the Snow God's Temple, buy some poison in the Thousand Poison Heaven, and return to the yin-yang heaven immediately. As long as he avoided Chun Huangdian and became a king, he wouldn't have to be scared of him when he appeared in the chaotic ocean again. However, it never occurred to Han Fei that the information he released would be sold so crazily. After only a few hours, more than 100 copies of the Avengers Intelligence and Supplementary Intelligence were sold. Just the Supplementary Intelligence was sold for more than 50 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Also, the information was still being sold. It should be easy for them to sell 100 million a day. At this moment, Song Kaiyuan's expression turned ugly, naturally because of this matter. He completely underestimated the power of Han Fei's intelligence. They only sold it for 20 million. If Han Fei learned about it, everybody looked at Song Kaiyuan sympathetically. Han Fei trusted him, so he asked him to do this. But now, he was obviously at a disadvantage. On the other side, the Avenger appeared at the port of the Martial Emperor city openly. Many people who were receiving guests at the port fell silent when they saw the Avenger. All of a sudden, the entire vengeance disappeared. A man in a black robe and a woman in a red and white gauze dress walked over from the void. Hiss, it's the Avenger. There's no mistaking it. Who's the one next to her? Is there such a beautiful woman on the Avenger? Someone said in a low voice, "What the F***ck do you know? It's said that we have some clues about the Avenger's identity. This woman is very likely to be Princess Mingzhu of the Mermaid Royal family. She has been abducted by Han Fei." Someone was shocked. Do they really dare to do this? They just showed up like this? Aren't they afraid of being targeted? Someone sneered. So what if they're targeted? This is the Martial Emperor city. Who dares to behave atrociously here? Someone sighed. I want to join this Avenger. I don't know if I have this opportunity. Ha! Bro, you think too much. Wherever the Avenger went, it would make enemies. If you get on the Avenger, I'm afraid you won't be able to get off. Someone echoed, yes, half of the top 10 pirate groups have a grudge against him. You can go, but I won't go. However, the Martial Emperor city was never short of bold people. Some people thought that since the Avenger could survive until now in this situation, it must be very strong, or Han Fei had other tricks up his sleeve. Immediately, someone said, Captain Han Fei, does the Avenger still accept people? I am an advanced venerable and very strong. Do I have a chance to join? Han Fei was pretending to be cool when someone suddenly said this. Han Fei glanced at him and said lightly, The Avenger only accepts people who are half-king level or above. We don't accept people who are not heavenly talents or half-king level or above. Hiss, all of a sudden, the people in the port were stunned. Everyone thought to themselves, You're king half-king yourself. Can you manage so many half-kings? However, Han Fei simply ignored this person. He looked at the vast land in the sea, the boundless wilderness, and the towering black stone buildings in the distance. Sea demons could walk on the land. There were transformed mermaids staring at him, octopus weirdo twisting its tentacles and looking at him curiously, and lobsters crawling on the ground. Seeing this scene, Han Fei felt that he had come to a monster concentration camp. The third chapter. Please vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 1833. In the Martial Emperor city there were all kinds of people, humans and demons. In the Martial Emperor city, venerables were everywhere, and explorers only accounted for a small number. The reason why there were explorers was that a small number of them were heavenly talents cultivated by certain forces, and most of them were the descendants of residents of the Martial Emperor city. Among them, there were humans, sea demons, and even mermaids. In fact, after a series of unknown training, these explorers became venerables and were mainly responsible for the operation of the entire Martial Emperor city. At this time, Han Fei saw a human woman wearing a kind of uniform. On the arm of the uniform, there was a Wu mark. On her waist, there was a badge similar to the star badge of the Scattered Stars Island. Han Fei guessed that the badge was used to identify one's identity, because everyone here had one. The woman looked calm and ordinary, the kind that couldn't be found in a sea of people. However, her strength had reached the peak of the venerable realm. When Han Fei and Xia Shaochan landed, the woman had already stepped forward, slightly cupped her hands, and said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, Captain Han Fei, because you made a big deal in the Martial Emperor city, the city sent me to lead you into the city. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. A big deal. Han Fei didn't ask much. He had already guessed what kind of deal it was. So, Han Fei just nodded slightly and said, Then lead the way. The woman said, "Gentlemen, please follow me. Let's walk into the city. During this period, I will explain some rules that you need to follow in the martial emperor city." Han Fei stepped on the sandy road, and when he walked, there was a creaking sound. Han Fei deliberately stepped on the road because he hadn't walked so firmly for a long time, especially in such a place that looked like a primitive island. In some places there were even muddy roads with mud and puddles. The woman said, "Sir, flying is not recommended in the martial emperor city most of the time. You can walk with the great Tao of space. However, we don't absolutely prohibit flying. In special circumstances, if you need to hurry, you can also fly." Of course, this is all monitored by the masters of the martial emperor city. They walked toward the city in the distance while chatting on the roadside. The woman explained the rules of the martial monarch city in an extremely familiar manner. Firstly, martial emperor city forbade people from using their senses to scan the city. If it was just scanning someone with his perception once or twice, it wouldn't be a big deal, but after a few times, he could report it. Secondly, martial emperor city encouraged everyone to speak their minds and not use voice transmissions. In order to ensure that no one could eavesdrop on their conversation, everyone who entered the martial emperor city was given an identity card. If he needed privacy, he would activate his identity card in secret. If it wasn't something private, everyone could just say it out loud. Also, the martial emperor city rejected discrimination. Discrimination was a sin. All races were born equal, and there was no such thing as high or low. If anyone dared to create discrimination in the martial emperor city, they would be chased out mercilessly. The result was very likely to be dismembered in the sea. In martial emperor city, there was no such thing as a currency. If there was, then it would be the use of supreme-grade spirit stones as currency. Everything would be converted into supreme-grade spirit stones. Of course, things like chaos aura could also be used as currency. However, most people wouldn't use it. This was because this was a paradise for thugs. Venerables are everywhere was a major feature of martial emperor city. It was inevitable that there would be enmity between experts occasionally. Even so, it was forbidden to fight in private. Once discovered, they would be severely punished. If the circumstances were serious, they would be expelled from the martial emperor city at the very least, or killed on the spot. Thus, if there were enemies in martial emperor city, they would either have to leave martial emperor city and settle it on their own, or go to the arena to have a duel to determine who was stronger and who was stronger, to the point where they were both convinced. After a brief introduction of the basic situation of martial emperor city, the woman said, "Generally speaking, you need to pay 100 supreme-grade spirit stones for every day you stay in martial emperor city. However, there is a rule in martial emperor city that anyone who spends more than 1 million yuan in martial emperor city will be charged 10 times less. Those who spend more than 10 million yuan will be exempted from staying and can even settle down in martial emperor city. Of course, this 10 million yuan can only be exempted for 5 people. If you want more free customers, you have to continue spending." Chirp on the way, Han Fei saw some birds and beasts of the Sky Clan flying by. He was quite pleased. So, the Sky Clan doesn't have to fly? On the roadside, grass and wildflowers were scattered randomly. Xia Xiaochan said, "They're just ordinary flowers and plants. They don't have any special power." The woman said, "They're just ordinary flowers and plants. But ordinary flowers and plants are also forbidden to be destroyed. Depending on the situation, you need to pay for the damage to the flowers and plant. If no one sees it, it's fine. Martial Emperor City pursues nature. If someone once stomped and destroyed a large area of flowers and plants, then he only had 2 choices, either to replant these flowers and plants, or to die." Han Fei, Xia Xiaochan. The 2 of them were speechless. There were so many rules in Martial Emperor City. Han Fei felt that those who didn't know better would think that they had entered a completely controlled civilized society. Han Fei asked, "What's your name?" The woman said, Sorry, I don't have a name. You can call me 3001, which means that I am the number 3001 attendant of Martial Emperor City. Xia Xiaochan couldn't help but frown. How inconvenient is it to have no name? You are already a peak-level venerable, which is one of the top existences in the chaotic ocean. There are very few people who are stronger than you. The woman said, if I were in the outside world, I would have other code names. But in Martial Emperor City, I am 3001. Obviously, this woman wouldn't disclose information other than her code name. So Xia Xiaochan didn't ask further. Seeing that they were about to reach the magnificent city, Han Fei said, since you are here to welcome us, you're not just here to show us the way and tell us about Martial Emperor City, are you? The woman said, if you want, you can go to the intelligence center of Martial Emperor City and exchange some information with us. We cherish every piece of information and will give a satisfactory price for it. Han Fei said with a smile, how much did I sell my last piece of information for? The woman said, 20 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Han Fei's eyelids twitched when he heard that. Xia Xiaochan almost broke down. She had been in the mermaid royal family for more than 20 years, and she had only earned 10 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. But it turned out that it was less expensive than Han Fei's last piece of information? Xia Xiaochan couldn't help but be a little confused. Had she been locked up for so long that her understanding of the chaotic azure sea's ultra-quality spiritual stones couldn't keep up with the situation? Han Fei tried to suppress the shock in his heart and said with a smile, then how much did you sell my piece of information for? The woman said, sorry, this is a private matter of our intelligence center. However, I can tell you the sales on the surface. As of the time I went to pick you up, on the surface, the information was sold for a total of 76 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. F***CK, Han Fei finally couldn't help but curse. The number had truly shocked him. He had never thought that it would be so easy to make money. Han Fei didn't expect that such a shrewd guy like Song Kaiyuan would sell his information at such a low price. Song Kaiyuan had said that the transaction on the surface was 76 million. There must be other large transactions behind it. Damn it, wouldn't it be sold for 1 or 200 million? Han Fei could understand. The so-called transaction on the surface was something that everyone could calculate and guess. Because everyone knew it, there was no need to hide it at all. However, he had already sold it, and the price was completely beyond his expectations. Han Fei estimated that even if he was here, he might have sold it for 10 million. Song Kaiyuan was probably not to be blamed for this. Han Fei thought for a moment. Okay, let's go to the intelligence center. After a moment, the woman took Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan to the city gate of the Martial Emperor City. At the city gate there would be someone to register them. After the registration, they would be given a permanent identity token, which could be pinned to the waist, similar to the star emblem token, but it didn't have as many functions as the star emblem token. At the city gate there were 2 advanced venerables guarding it. One was a shrimp soldier of the 100 Demons clan, and the other was a half-mermaid. Han Fei raised his head and looked at the city gate. The gate was more than 200 meters high and the city wall was more than 600 meters high. This scene was spectacular, but not enough to surprise Han Fei. Bada Han Fei raised his head and saw that on the bluestone of the city wall high above his head, drops of water occasionally fell on the bluestone slabs under his feet. Han Fei even saw raindrops falling on the shrimp soldier's head, but he didn't seem to notice it. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, is this the so-called nature? Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan entered the city gate. After passing through an invisible barrier, they looked at the gate almost at the same time, only to see a turtle sleeping. The turtle's aura was undoubtedly that of a half-king realm. Xia Xiaochan said, I knew that there must be a stronger guard at the city gate. The woman said, actually, it doesn't matter whether they guard it or not. As long as the barrier is there, If someone intentionally commits a crime and tries to escape, the success rate is still very low. Han Fei shrugged. Okay, let's continue. Tell me, what are the places worth visiting in the Martial Emperor City? Or rather, what large trading markets are there in the Martial Emperor City? The kind where large transactions can be conducted. Chapter 1834. Greetings, Your Highness. Xia Xiaochan waved her hand at a mermaid who bowed to her for no reason. She was speechless. This was already the 8th one. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan entered the city openly and didn't hide their identities at all. Therefore, many people recognized them, although they didn't know any of them. Xia Xiaochan couldn't help patting her head. Han Fei, aren't we too high profile? Han Fei nodded. We have to be high profile. It's best if Chun Huangdian can stand in front of me now. Believe it or not, I can spit on him in front of him. 3001 suddenly interjected. By the way, spitting is forbidden in the Martial Emperor City. Xia Xiaochan. Han Fei. The intelligence center of the Martial Emperor City. This place was like the logistics division of the Scattered Stars Island, and the buildings here were very large. Inside, there were nearly 100 service desks. Now, it seemed to be quite busy, and there were people at every service desk. Some service desks had no space to line up, and they even had to open small private rooms. Han Fei looked around. The layout of this place was not as gorgeous as the logistics division. Everywhere there were black stones. As soon as he came in, Han Fei heard someone say, "Give me the latest intelligence on the Avengers." As soon as this person's voice fell, suddenly, the hall fell silent. Many people looked back. Wow! Han Fei, the captain of the Avengers? A mermaid was here. After seeing Xia Xiaochan, he immediately saluted. Greetings, Your Highness. Xia Xiaochan nodded indifferently. No need to be so polite. Go ahead. Yes, Your Highness. Han Fei looked at Xia Xiaochan. You are more popular than me. Xia Xiaochan rolled her eyes. Why don't you turn into a mermaid prince and have a look? I'm sure someone will salute you too. In the hall, only some people were stunned for a moment, and then the noise was restored. As long as you entered the Martial Emperor City, no matter how awesome you were outside, no one would be afraid. Anyway, they couldn't fight here. 3001 said, Please. The Intelligence Center has arranged a special reception room for you too. The owner of our Intelligence Center will receive you in person. Han Fei's heart did a flip. A person who was in charge of such a large intelligence center must have a powerful background. Since this person wanted to take the time to receive him, it was obvious that the report had attracted their attention. Or rather, it was the latter piece of information that caught their attention. As 3001 entered the inner room, many people in the hall whispered, I'll buy it later. Let's wait a little longer. Maybe there will be new information. These people were all shrewd. Han Fei had come to the intelligence center in person. How could he not have some intelligence? After a while, Han Fei was taken to a place similar to a study in the intelligence center. In this place, bamboo shelves and fish skin scrolls were placed everywhere. The room wasn't small, and there were probably 1,000,000 fish skin scrolls. When they came in, they saw a woman in a bright red robe reading a fish skin scroll. The girl in room 3001 quietly left after seeing them in. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan's eyes were directly attracted by this woman. The woman's expression was extremely cold. Her cold temperament was a bit like Luo Xiaobai's. But even though she was cold, she couldn't get rid of the charm of a beautiful woman. When she saw Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan come in, the woman didn't continue to read, but put down and closed the fish skin scroll, and said to Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan solemnly, Sit down. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan looked at each other and didn't stand on ceremony. What really surprised them was that they couldn't see through this woman's strength. Under normal circumstances, this woman would undoubtedly be a king tier. Han Fei didn't expect that the owner of an intelligence center in the Martial Emperor City had reached the Pioneer Sea state. How many pioneer sea-state experts were there in the martial emperor's city? Seeing the two of them sit down, the woman in red said, "My identity is not a secret. I am Yen Meng, the owner of the intelligence center in the martial emperor's city. Those who can be invited here by me are usually people who have great intelligence and are usually here for large intelligence transactions." Han Fei said, "Haven't you already sold the intelligence?" Yen Meng pushed the 2 fish skin scrolls on the table to Han Fei and Xia Shaochan and said, "Take a look first." Han Fei and Xia Shaochan opened the first fish skin scroll in confusion. This fish skin scroll contained the basic information of the Avenger, which was also the basic information that exposed Han Fei's identity. Although the second scroll also recorded the basic information of the Avenger, this one was much more comprehensive. It actually recorded Han Fei's transactions in the treasure pavilion in the Thunderfire Heaven, the auction, the first plunder, changing his name to Snow Battle, snatching the Wind Pearl, and so on. When Han Fei sold the intelligence, he didn't expect that the intelligence ability of the martial emperor city would be so terrifying. Some of the things that shouldn't have been discovered were recorded here. Yen Meng said, "You've seen the intelligence ability of the martial emperor city. However, I didn't sell this piece of intelligence to anyone. Otherwise, the Snow God's Temple and the Glass Palace would definitely be hostile to the other 36 profound heavens. Although they wouldn't be destroyed in the short term, it would definitely cause internal strife in the human race." Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. Why did the martial emperor city suppress the contents of this intelligence? Yen Meng looked at Xia Shaochan and said seriously, "Does Chun Huangyan really have an emperor technique?" Xia Shaochan wasn't stupid. As a member of the mermaid royal family, she certainly knew how powerful the mermaid royal family was. She knew that Han Fei's purpose was to push Chun Huangyan to the forefront so that he would be doubted in the mermaids and even in the entire chaotic ocean. Although Chun Huangyan had protected her, he had also detained her for decades. Besides, Han Fei wouldn't be able to do anything to Chun Huangyan. It would only put him in trouble. Xia Shaochan felt that it was feasible in any case. Xia Shaochan said without blinking, "Of course, not just that. I also suspect that he's hiding his strength." Yen Meng asked again, "Do you have any proof?" Xia Shaochan shook her head. "No." Yen Meng asked, "Then how can you provide this intelligence?" Xia Shaochan said, "I have my own way. Since the martial emperor city is so well informed, you must know why my mother has been sleeping for so long." Yen Meng said, "That's a mystery." Xia Shaochan said, "That's the mystery. I won't reveal too much. But my mother's hibernation is related to the outside of the chaotic ocean." Yen Meng pointed at the wooden table and asked casually, "Are you selling this intelligence?" Xia Shaochan shook her head quickly. "No." Yen Meng slightly nodded and looked at Han Fei. "The martial emperor city has heard of the oracle of the sea suppressing God in this intelligence. However, it's just a rumor in the Age of Doom. However, it doesn't mention an amazing technique to become an emperor." "How do you know it?" Han Fei said with a smile. "How much is the information we just provided worth?" Yen Meng's face was emotionless. 5 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Han Fei asked, "Then what about the question you just asked?" Yen Meng said, 50 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, damn it. Rich people are always so generous. 50 million as if it's only 5,000? However, this amazing technique was made up by Han Fei in the first place. Han Fei could fool most people, but he couldn't really fool the martial emperor city. Otherwise, once he was exposed, he would be lying to the martial emperor city on purpose. So, Han Fei slightly sighed. It's a pity that my information comes from the river of time. The specific time is about 120,000 years ago. You want me to prove it, but I can't. I can't judge whether this information is true or not. It seems that I can't get the 50 million. Yen Meng's eyes slightly lit up. The River of Time? We can also buy information about the River of Time at a high price. Han Fei shook his head. I won't sell information about the River of Time. Unless I become a king one day, my strength will be comparable to that of most kings in the chaotic ocean sea. Yen Meng nodded slightly. That was completely understandable. Since Han Fei's identity was exposed, he had already become a target of public criticism. She said, "Just now, your words about the River of Time and 120,000 years ago are worth 5 million. If there's nothing else, this transaction is over." Han Fei said, "Wait, I happen to have information to buy." Yen Meng nodded. "Oh? Tell me about it." Han Fei made 10 million ultra-quality spiritual stones just by saying a few words here. However, she didn't know how much it would cost to buy this information. Han Fei said, "I want to know why the kings of the chaotic ocean sea can't enter the yin-yang heaven." Yen Meng was slightly stunned. "You don't know?" Han Fei shook his head. "I don't." Yen Meng's expression changed only for a moment, so she said, 5 million. The corners of Han Fei's mouth trembled slightly, and he couldn't help but ask, "Does our intelligence center charge in the millions?" Yen Meng nodded. "The price of intelligence varies." Han Fei gritted his teeth. "Yes," Yen Meng said, "because of the yin-yang Great Millstone. A yin-yang Great Millstone was formed in the depths of the savage abyss. This millstone can't be entered without the great Tao of yin and yang. Otherwise, even an emperor himself would be crushed by the power of the wildlands. If it were 80,000 years ago, it might be possible to break in by force. However, as time goes by, the yin-yang Great Millstone has become stronger and stronger, and it has long been impossible to enter." Yin-yang Great Millstone? Han Fei couldn't help but think of the millstone-shaped place he saw before. So, that thing was the real reason why others couldn't enter? Han Fei was puzzled. Then why can someone enter the yin-yang heaven by projection? Yen Meng said, 2 million. Han Fei thought to himself, does this also cost money? Han Fei didn't feel good at all. However, thinking that he had just made 10 million, he didn't mind spending it. So Han Fei nodded. Yes. Yen Meng said, the Tao of space can change the form of space. The Tao of time can travel through the gaps of time. In fact, there were even ancient sacrificial techniques that disregarded the Taoist rhymes of space. However, the most common method was to use projections, and then continue to project projections to graft and cross space. However, if they do this, their strength will definitely be greatly reduced. Even if they can bypass the yin-yang Great Millstone, they can only go there with a projection. They are very weak. Chapter 1835. At this moment, Han Fei heaved a long sigh of relief. Even if it was just to vent his anger, Han Fei felt that the 7 million ultra-quality spiritual stones were well spent. At this moment, he realized that nobody, including Chun Huangdian, could go to the savage abyss. No wonder Chun Huangdian could go there. It turned out to be a projection of a projection, which temporarily avoided the yin-yang grindstone by means of serial projections. Therefore, when Chun Huangdian went there, he was only an explorer. At this moment, Han Fei was naturally reassured. Other people couldn't go there, but he could go there. Unlike other people, who couldn't pass the yin-yang grindstone, he could perform the Gemini divine technique. His mist body was not afraid of the yin-yang grindstone, so he could return to the yin-yang heaven safely. Han Fei continued, the savage abyss should be connected to more than one place. I want to know what other secrets there are in the savage abyss. Yen Meng said, the total price of this information is 30 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Han Fei, Xia Shaochan secretly stuck out her tongue. Now, she felt that the ultra-quality spiritual stones in the big starfish's door couldn't even buy 1/3 of the information. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. He asked this question out of curiosity. In the end, he didn't know if he hadn't asked, but the moment he did, he was shocked. This was so much faster than robbing him. Han Fei immediately shook his head. Forget it. It's too expensive. Han Fei was going to ask if there was any information about the demon purification pot. However, on second thought, why should I ask about this kind of thing? He could just point at it with the nautical panorama. Moreover, the demon purification gourd had to be kept a secret, and no one else could know about it. As far as Han Fei was concerned, he came to the martial emperor city mainly to cause trouble. Now that the first thing was done, there was no need to panic. He could just wait and watch the show. Han Fei said, "I have nothing else to buy. Come in." Yan Meng called, and the woman number 3001 came in. She said, "Take them back and pay 3 million ultra-quality spiritual stones." Yes. When Han Fei and the others left the room, a man quietly appeared in the room. Yan Meng said, "What do you think about the prophecy he said?" The man said, "It seems that they intentionally released the news to torment Chun Huangyan. However, as far as we know, the information matches up perfectly." He talked about the River of Time, which makes it more believable. The martial emperor city had always suspected Chun Huangyan's strength. Now that the mermaid princess had personally confirmed it, the credibility was not low either. It didn't matter if the venerable emperor art was real or fake, and it didn't matter if the merfolk race could communicate with people outside of the chaotic Azure Sea. Even if it was fake, this information was still very valuable. At the very least, this information has given us a way to prepare the chaotic Azure Sea's people. Yan Meng nodded slightly. "I think so too. Pass down the order. The Avenger will add another 500,000 top-grade spirit stones to the price." Okay. After leaving the Martial Emperor City's intelligence center, 3001 took out a map of the city and handed it to the two of them. "Please help yourselves." This was the topographic map of Martial Emperor City. There were some important places in the city marked on it. If the two of them had the time, they could go and take a look. "I'll take my leave." Han Fei took the map jade slip, scanned it with his perception, and memorized the map of the city. Casually, Han Fei handed the map to Xia Shaochan. Xia Shaochan said, "It seems that the martial emperor city doesn't want the human race to have internal strife." Han Fei said, "Even if the news is leaked and others learn of my relationship with the Snow God's palace and the glass sky, it's useless. There are only 30 years left before the Imperial Palace opens. For them, the time is too short. It's almost in front of them. The masters of the immortal palaces are already old. If they want to fight, they won't do it before the Imperial Palace opens. That's why I released the news, not entirely because the martial Emperor City doesn't want to cause internal strife in the human race." Xia Shaochan nodded slightly and said in surprise, "This martial Emperor City has a lot of facilities. It's somewhat similar to the Scattered Stars Island." Han Fei said, "There are only a few things that humans can do on land. No matter where they go, they're always the same. It's nothing to be surprised about." From the map, Han Fei learned that the martial Emperor City had special auction houses, gambling houses, treasure pavilions, bookstores, super resource stores, refining workshops, cultivation towers, multiple inns, martial arts arenas, mission centers, large itinerant cultivator trading markets, and even medical centers. It could be said that it had all the functions it should have. Among them, what was the most worthwhile place to go? Han Fei found that the super resource stores, mission centers, and the large itinerant cultivator trading markets were all bustling places. They must be the most worthwhile places to go. Xia Shaochan said, "Which one should we go to first? How about the super resource store?" According to the introduction, this is the exclusive store of the martial Emperor City. All kinds of good things are placed on the shelves for sale, with clearly marked prices. If you have money, you can buy it. If you don't have money, you can't buy it. Han Fei grinned and said, "Let's go there. Now that we are rich people, let's go and have a look." Quack, the two of them stood at the door of the intelligence center and saw a red armored centipede 5 or 6 meters long crawling over. When the centipede saw Han Fei and Xia Shaochan, it couldn't help but be stunned. Han Fei, the leader of the Avengers? My apologies, my apologies. The centipede propped up the front half of its body and spoke with its big, hideous mouth. Its strength had reached the half-king realm. Han Fei was stunned for a moment. One day, he would actually chat with a centipede? This was beyond his expectation. Han Fei nodded and said, "Do we know each other?" The centipede shook its head. No. However, the Avenger did a good job fighting the Azura pirate. I really admire you. Han Fei didn't know how to communicate with this kind of venerable insect. He nodded and didn't say anything more. He just said that he had something to do and left. At any rate, he was now a big shot of a region, an existence that could defeat the top 10 pirate group. With his strength, even in the martial Emperor city, he was also an extremely powerful and glorious figure. How could others talk to him casually? The Super Resource Store. When Han Fei and Xia Shaochan found this place, they found that this market was really large, covering an area of about 500 square kilometers. Yes, Han Fei was right. It was such a big place, and inside it there were a lot of goods placed there in satisfaction. When Han Fei and Xia Shaochan arrived, some people had already recognized them. However, no one came to talk to them. After all, there were many strong masters in the martial Emperor city. After all, Han Fei was just a half-king realm cultivator. Although many people marveled at Han Fei's identity and stubbornness, they didn't want to make friends with him. They were not very willing to. After entering the supermarket, they saw a half-king realm powerhouse gave Han Fei and Xia Shaochan each a jade slip, saying, "Guests, this is the topographic map of our store and the shelves where the resources are placed. If you too like something, just take off the jade slip label under the corresponding resource. When the settlement is over, the corresponding staff will send the high-quality goods you choose to you." Xia Shaochan took a breath and said, "This is even larger than the trading market of the Mermaid Royal family. If I didn't know, I would think this was the treasure house of the martial Emperor city." Han Fei reached out and closed Xia Shaochan's mouth. "Don't be envious. The treasure house of the Mermaid Royal family can't be worse than this. Okay, let's go and have a look first. I seem to be in the bone area now." As soon as the two entered, they looked up. The skeleton of the ink dragon fish was at the peak of the venerable realm. It was extremely tough and was said to be a rare stone among bones. Its price was 100,000 top-grade spirit stones. Dark ice dragon teeth, half-king, extremely sharp and extremely hard material, priced at 180,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones. Heartless seahorse bone, peak-level venerable, can be used as medicine, extremely difficult to find, priced at 160,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones. There was no end to this row of shelves. Han Fei looked all the way and saw the highest price, which even reached more than 2 million, was a half-king realm big bone. Suddenly, Xia Shaochan shouted, "Han Fei, come over and take a look." Han Fei leaned over and took a look, and immediately took a breath. Ancient black crab shell armor, sea expansion realm, extremely terrifying defensive power, which could block the bombardment of a sea expansion realm cultivator. It was an ultra-quality material for refining sea expansion realm treasures. This shell was the shell of the ancient black crab, extremely difficult to find, priced at 3.98 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. When Han Fei saw this shell armor, his first thought was to use it to refine weapons. In this chaotic sea, in the extreme battle of strength, ultra-quality divine weapons were no longer enough. Sea-quelling bizarre treasures, because they were extremely difficult to refine, were also priceless. Now that Han Fei saw a top-level material like the ancient black crab here, how could he not be tempted? Han Fei just didn't have so much time to refine weapons. Otherwise, if Han Fei really studied refining, he might be able to refine this sea-quelling bizarre treasure. At this time, the little vines of the demon purification pot returned one after another, which could also be used to refine sea-quelling bizarre treasures, but it consumed a lot of energy. Han Fei was relatively poor before, or rather, he didn't have enough resources, so he didn't refine sea-quelling bizarre treasures. But now, in the martial Emperor City, he had all kinds of materials, so what couldn't he do? Now, Han Fei had the white armor Emperor's shell armor, which was his best material. But it was probably only comparable to this ancient black crab. Immediately, Han Fei pulled this jade slip off. Xia Xiaochan was taken aback. 4 million. Do you really think I'll buy it? Han Fei smiled and said, Don't worry, we have money. This is a material for refining sea-quelling bizarre treasures. It's worth it to make one. Xia Xiaochan was stunned. You can refine sea-quelling bizarre treasures now? Han Fei nodded. I can try. Mainly, I have too many messy resources. If I can exchange them for such treasures, why wouldn't I? Then, without hesitation, Han Fei held the jade slip of the ancient black crab in his hand and said, Let's keep looking. I'm a rich man now, and I like this kind of high-level stuff. Han Fei didn't know that when he was holding the jade slip of the ancient black crab, a king was looking at him. The king murmured, Interesting. Chapter 1836. In the Super Resource Store, there were mainly spiritual fruits, spiritual liquids, demonic plant materials, demonic beast materials, weapons, ores, and various body materials of marine creatures. Han Fei had always been very interested in spiritual fruit. However, when Han Fei looked at the spiritual fruit shelf, he found that all kinds of spiritual fruits were packaged and sold together. The lowest price was 100. Furthermore, these were not ordinary spirit fruit. They were all extremely difficult to find. For example, the dragon blood fruit that Han Fei auctioned in the Thunder Fire Heaven. Oh my God, there were more than 20 of them here. Of course, the price was not cheap. The price of 20 dragon blood fruits reached a sky-high price of 2 million. Han Fei narrowed his eyes when he saw this. At this price, he couldn't afford it. Considering that the dragon blood fruit had a great body-refining effect, even if he cultivated the pure mystic body, a dragon blood fruit could support him for 3 days of cultivation. Han Fei gritted his teeth and took the jade slip of the dragon blood fruit. After all, Han Fei only had one left. With these 20 pills as a foundation, he could have at least 2 months of explosive training. After a while, Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan strolled to the shelf of demon essence pills, only to see that Xia Xiaochan couldn't walk anymore. Han Fei asked, Is this demon essence of the mermaid clan beneficial to your cultivation? Xia Xiaochan nodded. There is some demon essence of the mermaids here, but they are actually called mermaid pearls. For example, a half-martial king realm mermaid pearl can increase my strength by about 5%. Wow, Han Fei said in surprise, doesn't that mean that swallowing 10 of them can increase your strength by another 50%? Xia Xiaochan looked at Han Fei as if looking at a fool. How can it be so easy? Of course, the more I absorb, the less effective it will be. However, there was only one demonic essence of the half-monarch realm here. As for the mermaid pearl of the peak-level venerable realm, its effect on me is not very obvious. Han Fei immediately greeted the waiter. At the top of the store, an intermediate venerable realm waiter immediately landed. What can I do for you? Han Fei pointed at the demonic essence of the half-king realm and said, How many do you have in total? The waiter was stunned for a moment. There was no telling if he had recognized them. He quickly said, Please wait a moment. I'll check the inventory. After about 2 minutes, the man reappeared in front of them and introduced, Sir, there are 57 known mermaid pearls of the half-king mermaid clan. How many do you need? Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan were dumbfounded. They looked at each other in bewilderment. F***ck, there are as many as 57 demon essence pill beads priced at 12.8 million each? This meant that there were 57 merfolk half-kings that had fallen. Xia Xiaochan was obviously stunned too. She looked at Han Fei and said, We don't need that much. But we can't afford it, can we? Han Fei's body began to heat up. He immediately said, "Why can't I afford it? Do we look like people who lack money? I have 31 million on me. How many do you want?" Xia Shaochan swallowed, calculated for a while, and quickly came to a conclusion. 10. 10 mermaid pearls of the half-king mermaid clan can definitely improve my strength by more than 30%. Han Fei knew how significant this 30% was, so he immediately said, "Buy it." He looked at the waiter and said, "Give me 10. The waiter's heart did a flip. What a generous offer. It usually took a long time for someone to buy one of these resources. This person immediately bought it. He was rich and overbearing. However, the demonic essence of the half-king mermaid clan alone cost 12.8 million. All the ultra-quality spiritual stones Xia Shaochan had added up were not enough. Of course, if Xia Shaochan was willing to sell other things, it would definitely be enough. But how could Han Fei let her spend this money? The waiter reacted very quickly and said, "Please wait a moment." Then, in less than 2 minutes, he came back again, holding 10 jade slips in his hand. At this moment, Han Fei was already holding a handful of jade slips in his hand. There were only 2 or 3 people shopping near Han Fei and Xia Shaochan. When they saw the actions of these 2 people, they were dumbfounded. Someone secretly exclaimed, "They're really King rich." A guy in the costume of the Gale pirate crew swallowed frantically. F***ck. How many times do I have to rob them before I can get them back? However, Han Fei looked at Xia Shaochan and said, "Let's keep shopping." Xia Shaochan couldn't help but feel a little guilty and secretly said to Han Fei, "We're still shopping? We've almost spent 20 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. If we keep shopping, I'm afraid I won't be able to stop." Han Fei smiled. "Don't panic. I know what I'm doing. In total, we have more than 40 million supreme-grade spirit stones. Song Kaiyuan still has 20 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. That's not even close." Xia Shaochan said, "Fortunately, we put the big starfish into the painting. Otherwise, it won't be able to walk anymore." Han Fei smiled and said, "It hasn't digested the power in its body yet. It doesn't have to worry about these things now." Han Fei and Xia Shaochan continued to sweep the shelves while muttering. They had only walked less than 10 kilometers. Suddenly, Han Fei's eyes fell on a row of shelves. On the shelf, it was written, "Azure Dragon Big Tendon, Sea Expansion State, Refining Material for Sea-Quelling Bizarre Treasures, Extremely Rare." This Azure Dragon Big Tendon came from an Azure Dragon in the Sea Expansion State summoned by the dragon subduing heaven 30,000 years ago. The price is 2.08 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Gulp. Han Fei couldn't move at all. A Sea Expansion State Big Tendon? This is a perfect match for my void lines. Han Fei immediately waved to the waiter who was patrolling in the air just now. "Come here." When the waiter saw that Han Fei was shopping again, and this time he saw the Azure Dragon Big Tendon, he was shocked. Damn, this is a big customer. Even though the martial Emperor City had trained these waiters to be indifferent, at this moment, he couldn't help but feel his heart pounding. After all, they sold things for commission. "What can I do for you?" Han Fei pointed at the Azure Dragon Big Tendon and said, "Let me ask you, how many Sea Expansion State Big Tendons do you have?" The waiter immediately said, "Please wait a moment. I'll be right back." 3 seconds later, the man came back again. However, this time he came back with someone else. The newcomer was a half-king realm expert. The half-king realm expert said with a smile, "Hi, I'm number 203. You can call me 203. Even in the martial Emperor City, there are only 3 Sea Expansion State Big Tendons." Han Fei frowned and said, "Not enough." 203 seemed to understand and immediately said with a smile, "Do you like half-king realm Big Tendons?" Han Fei shook his head. "Not good enough." Xia Shaochan couldn't help but look at Han Fei. "Wait, are you going to make a fishing rod?" Han Fei smiled extravagantly. It's very useful. I'll tell you later. 203 said, Your Excellency Han Fei, in fact, in addition to the Azure Dragon Big Tendon, if you can accept the big tendons of other creatures, such as the big tendon of the sea-swallowing demon whale, the big tendon of the mountain sea divine turtle, if these are acceptable, we can take out a total of 21 tendons in our shop. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. The quality is similar to this Azure Dragon Big Tendon? 203 replied, Not much different. They are all sea expansion state creatures. However, they are not necessarily peeled off after the sea expansion state creatures died. Some of them were sold by sea expansion state creatures themselves. Some were obtained after they shed their flesh. But most of them are similar in nature. In terms of price, they are all within the range of 200,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Give me 11. 203 smiled delightedly. With a flip of his hand, a circle of jade slips with a rope buckle appeared in his hand. He said, Choose 11 of the best quality for you too. There are prices on them. You can take a look. When you check out, you can see the real thing. If you don't like it, you don't have to buy it. Han Fei nodded slightly. That's good. Han Fei was about to continue shopping with Xia Shaochan when 203 said, Your Excellency Han Fei, this should be the first time you have come to the Martial Emperor City. Maybe you don't know that if you spend more than 10 million ultra-quality spiritual stones in our shop, you can get a 5% discount. If you spend more than 20 million ultra-quality spiritual stones, you can get a 10% discount, up to a 30% discount. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Does it mean that 60 million is the best deal? The actual payment was only 42 million yuan. Damn it, how can Han Fei afford it? Even Xia Xiaochan's eyes narrowed. If the two of them added up, they would definitely have 42 million yuan. Han Fei smiled and said, That's not bad. Let's continue shopping. 203 smiled and said, Take your time. I'll keep an eye on you. After taking 2 steps, Han Fei suddenly looked back and said, By the way, does your shop collect resources? 203 immediately smiled and said, Of course. Most of these resources are collected by us. In the Martial Emperor City, except for the auction house, the price of resources is basically the same, and the fluctuation will never exceed 10%. The recovery price offered by our super resource shop is quite reasonable. Han Fei's heart did a flip. That's good. Han Fei and Xia Shaochan had already made up their minds to spend 60 million yuan today. After all, although the things here were good, not everything was good enough for him to look at. After looking around, Han Fei found that there seemed to be a lot of pioneer Sea Realm materials here. How many kings must have died? Well, there were also those who molted. But how many times could a king molt in his life? If he wanted to buy all of them, even hundreds of millions wouldn't be enough. So, Han Fei called 203 over again. 203 seemed to know that Han Fei would call him, so he appeared in front of Han Fei in an instant. Han Fei said, Do you have any albums? It will be easier for us to find them this way. 203 immediately smiled and said, Yes. The reason why I didn't show them to you before is that most customers prefer to see them with their own eyes rather than look at albums. Han Fei said directly, Why didn't you say so earlier? Give me the albums. It's such a big place. How long will it take to look at them one by one? 203 had already prepared them and handed a jade slip to Han Fei and Xia Shaochan. Then he quietly retreated, not disturbing the two of them looking through the jade slip. When the two of them quickly scanned the jade slips, they saw that their expressions were constantly changing. Obviously, they were shocked. Xia Shaochan said, Han Fei, I found a treasure. Han Fei said, I found a treasure too. Xia Shaochan said, I found another treasure. Han Fei nodded. Me too. I found something better. Chapter 1837. The two chatted and watched for a long time. Finally, Xia Shaochan said, The essence blood of the Mermaid Emperor, 9. 8 million for a bottle. Oh my God, I want this. A 6th grade soul pill, 5 million for a single one. After taking it, it can generate chaotic power, which is said to increase the power of the soul by 10%. Unfortunately, you can only take one. Huh. The deep sea spirit spring I saw also has the effect of improving and stabilizing the soul. It's only 10,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones per kilogram. Seeing the two of them talking to each other, it felt like the resources of the entire store were already theirs. After a long time, the two of them slowly came back to themselves. Han Fei's body was hot and he felt that his nose was about to bleed. If possible, Han Fei really wanted to buy all these resources. However, after the enthusiasm, the two of them found that they couldn't be too crazy when buying things. The two of them calculated that if they bought all the resources they wanted, they wouldn't be able to afford it even if they had 1,000,000,000 yuan. So, in the end, the two of them compromised with money. After struggling for half a day, it was already late. There were more and more customers in the store. Although cultivators never distinguished between day and night. However, the night was quiet and people would always seek excitement and excitement. This was especially true in the martial emperor city. At this moment, the auction was about to begin. All the restaurants were opening for business. There were also a steady stream of people in the mission center. The number of people in Han Fei's super resource store was also several times more than during the day. Ring, just when many people were selecting some resources that they thought would be of great help to them, they heard a tinkling sound. Then, they saw a man and a woman, carrying a lot of jade slips, walking over. The man looked ordinary, but his temperament was amazing. The woman, on the other hand, was extremely beautiful. She did not seem to be a beauty that should be in the mortal world. Huh. They are Han Fei from the Avengers? And the princess of the mermaid royal family? Is this the Han Fei who dared to fight the Wuji Sky Fleet head-on? Someone secretly said, "Didn't he run away?" One sneered. "What do you know? He defeated Li Xinghen and escaped safely from Bei Xianbing." Someone sighed. "Isn't it because of the Gemini divine technique of the yin-yang heaven? That Gemini divine art, known as the chaotic vast sea, is best at escaping, so it's normal for him to be able to escape." Someone sighed. "It seems that the yin-yang true form is about to reappear in the chaotic azure sea. Otherwise, why would Han Fei dare to make such a big fuss?" However, Han Fei and Xia Shaochan had no time to care about what these people were discussing. The two of them carried a pile of jade slip. Their minds were filled with the value of these things. The checkout area was huge. For example, the shell of the primordial mystic horseshoe crab that Han Fei wanted had to be hammered. The problem of quality was shown on the spot. Once he left the store, no matter what happened, it would have nothing to do with the super resource store. Han Fei threw a pile of jade slips over. Very soon, there were people in charge of the delivery of the product. The waiters lined up one after another to deliver resources to Han Fei. Someone exclaimed, "Isn't that the shell of the primordial black horseshoe crab? That thing has been hanging there for hundreds of years and no one has touched it. How can it be sold today?" Someone asked doubtfully, "Isn't it said that the primordial mystic centipede shell armor is extremely difficult to forge?" This was said by the person from the thunder fire sky. He said that the shell has its own heaven and earth spiritual array, and if you're not careful, the array will be destroyed. What's the use of buying this thing? Immediately afterward, someone suddenly exclaimed, "What's that green cattail leaf fan? Is it the divine demon vine leaf?" Wow. It's the divine demon vine leaf, 3 million ultra-quality spiritual stones per leaf. This one is particularly bright and there are 9 of them. How King rich is he? Gulp. Many people gulped down their saliva. The value of these 2 items had already exceeded 30 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. This was simply taking money and not treating it as money. Han Fei couldn't pretend that he could understand it at first glance. Even if he was pretending, he had to give it a try. Han Fei knocked a few times on the shell armor with an ultra-quality divine weapon. Then, he chopped a few more times on the divine demon vine leaf before putting it into the sun-moon shell. He took out 20 spiritual fruits like the dragon blood fruit at once. Although this caused a small commotion, it was still far from the previous 2. However, when the demonic essence of a half-king appeared, a group of sea demons and even mermaids exclaimed, "Half-king demonic essence? No, it's a half-king merman pearl. If I remember correctly, one can only be bought for 2 million ultra-quality spiritual stones or more. Besides, if it's not an ultimate cultivation method, I'm afraid this half-king merman pearl won't be very useful. If it's someone else, I'm afraid the effect will be greatly reduced." Immediately afterward, everyone became more and more shocked. Oh my God! A 6th-grade soul pill? There are only 3 of them in the resource store, each priced at 5 million, which is enough to buy a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. The essence blood of the mermaid emperor. This thing was priced at 12 million and hasn't been sold for more than 900 years. Now it's selling too? Is that the azure dragon tendon? Oh my God, a dozen? Are you going to buy so many to weave a net? At the checkout place, more and more onlookers gathered. Even if it was just to watch the rich guy buy things, they refused to leave. Xia Xiaochan asked Han Fei via voice transmission, "Do we really have enough money?" Han Fei nodded. "Don't panic. Yes, it's definitely enough." In such a big checkout scene, number 203 even felt the gaze of a king. Number 203 quoted the prices one by one. Ancient Mystic Centipede Shell Armor, 3.98 million. Dragon Blood Fruit 2 million. 10 Half-King Merman Pearls, 13.1 million in total. 1 bottle of Essence Blood of the Mermaid Emperor, 9.8 million. 11 King Tendons, 23.06 million in total. 3 6th-grade Soul Pills, 15 million in total. 500 Caddies of Deep Sea Spirit Spring, 5 million in total. 9 Petals of Divine Demon Vine Leaves, 3 million in total. 27 million in total. After that, number 203 looked up at Han Fei and said with a smile, "Captain Han Fei, the total amount is 94 million. I'll give you a 30% discount, and the total price is 25 million. I'll erase the remainder for you." Wow, gulp. This is what a rich man should be like. His financial strength is no less than that of the top 10 pirate groups. Someone sneered. Not less? How can the top 10 pirate groups be so rich? That money has to be distributed to so many people. Someone snorted. What do you know? Which captain of the top 10 pirate groups is worth less than 100 million? Han Fei naturally had no time to listen to these people's discussion. When he paid the money, his face turned green. After all, he had accidentally bought too much. It was more than 27 million, more than 42 million. This was the largest transaction in Han Fei's history. Han Fei said, "Can I exchange it with an ultra-quality spiritual weapon?" Number 203 was taken aback for a moment, then smiled and said, "Of course. However, it must be an ultra-quality spiritual weapon at least. Our super resource store will not accept anything lower than the quality of an ultra-quality spiritual weapon." Han Fei nodded slightly and issued an order in his heart. Clang, clang, clang. In front of him, a large number of top-grade divine weapons were piled up like a mountain on the ground. There were as many as 3,000 of them. Number 203 didn't expect that Han Fei would take out so many ultra-quality divine weapons at once. Even the Thunder Fire Sky couldn't take out so many ultra-quality divine weapons at once. It must be noted that the refining of an ultra-quality divine weapon required a professional refiner to refine it for several months. Some refiners with poor refining skills even needed several years, decades, or even hundreds of years to refine. Han Fei casually took out more than 3,000 pieces. Who wouldn't be shocked? However, Number 203 was very happy that Han Fei took out ultra-quality divine weapons to make up for it. These sea expansion realm materials were too difficult to sell. However, ultra-quality divine weapons were too easy to sell. Besides, the purchase price was not high, and the average price was less than 25,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones. The difference in price was much better than simply selling sea expansion realm materials. Before the appraisers who had been prepared started to appraise, they suddenly saw a middle-aged man appear at the transaction site. As soon as this middle-aged man appeared, the people in number 203 immediately bowed to him. "Lord Yu." The man nodded slightly. Xia Shaochan said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "By Yu, people call him Lord Yu. I only know that he is one of the kings of the martial emperor city." Bai Yu glanced at Xia Shaochan and said, "I'll personally select these resources." He saw the mountain-like supreme-grade divine weapons flying past. It only took half an hour for Bai Yu to count them. Then he took a deep look at Han Fei and said, "A total of 3,000 pieces, priced at 24,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones per piece. Do you have any objections?" Han Fei shook his head. No. Han Fei didn't take out some of his common weapons. These 3,000 pieces were all of average quality, which was why he took them out. Of course, they were all ultra-quality divine weapons, so their quality wouldn't be bad. Bai Yu said, "If there is no other transaction, our super resource store will pay you another 3.45 million ultra-quality spiritual stones, and this transaction is over." Han Fei nodded slightly. "That's good. I wonder what is the standard of the resource store's harvest?" Bai Yu said, "We don't accept resources below the peak level of the Venerable Realm unless they are extremely special. Of course, other stores on the island are likely to accept them. However, in the Martial Emperor City, resources below the Venerable Realm are not circulated. Some ordinary resources are also of very low value. The valuable ones are all good." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Understood, the transaction is over." Bai Yu nodded slightly. The next moment, he disappeared. Today, everyone present was stunned. Han Fei and Xia Shaochan bought almost 100 million worth of resources. What are they going to do? Are they going to be the king? Chapter 1838. This time, Han Fei had really gone all out. Although Han Fei had a lot of resources, he couldn't afford such consumption. Han Fei planned to keep many of the resources and bring them back to the Yin-Yang Heaven. However, when shopping in the Super Resource Store, Han Fei really couldn't control himself. For example, when he saw the leaves of the divine demonic vine, he knew that the leaves were made of strange divine demonic threads. Using it to refine battlesuits, one could even refine sea-quelling bizarre treasures. To put it bluntly, it should not be a problem to refine 9 sets of battlesuits with 9 leaves. There were 9 sets of sea-quelling bizarre treasures. Also, the grade 6 soul pills. If they were to be auctioned off, the price would probably be 5 million per pill. The reason why they were still kept in the resource store was because the resource store had a rich variety of items. It was originally going for the high-end route, so it naturally couldn't be lacking in such high-end items. Of course, among these things, the first one that Han Fei could use were the 11 tendons. Those were the tendons of the sea expansion realm. If they were used to refine the void lines, their power would be enough to shake sea expansion experts. Deal with a half-king realm cultivator? There were no more mistakes. The news that Han Fei and Xia Shaochan spent hundreds of millions of yuan on the resource store almost spread throughout the entire Martial Emperor City in a moment. After all, this move was too ruthless. Although the Martial Emperor City was known to have countless treasures, it was rare to see someone throw away hundreds of millions of treasures like Han Fei and the others. Even the captains of the top 10 pirate crews had never spent so much money before. Of course, it was mainly because these things were useless to them. Not only did he not know how to smith or forge pills, he had also bought grade 6 soul pills and the like to raise his fighting prowess. At this moment, soon after he left the resource store, he saw Li Kaitian. As soon as Li Kaitian saw Han Fei, he immediately greeted him. "Captain, I heard that you went to the island and came to the resource store. Old Song was afraid that you didn't have enough money, so he asked me to send you money." Li Kaitian immediately took out the Sun Moon shell and handed it to Han Fei. Then, he looked in the direction of the resource store and asked tentatively, "Are they done buying? By the time you gave me the money, I was already detained there. There's 20 million here?" Li Kaitian nodded. "Captain, your information is true? If we had known, we would have asked for more. It's just that we didn't expect it." "Heh!" Han Fei said angrily, "Fine. I've been to the intelligence center, and I can't go any higher. Let's go back first. The Martial Emperor's inheritance will be in 2 days. I should go back and study it." Sigh. "Captain, what did you buy? We haven't visited this resource store before. It's said that the things inside are quite expensive, easily hundreds of thousands." Hardly had Li Kaitian said that when someone exclaimed not far away, "Look, that's Han Fei, the Avenger. He just bought 100 million worth of goods from the resource store." Wow, a pirate captain level powerhouse is indeed extraordinary. Someone greeted Han Fei. "Captain Han Fei, is the Avenger still recruiting?" Han Fei said casually, "No. That person only felt that it was a pity, but he did not take it to heart." However, Li Kaitian was dumbfounded. "What do you mean by buying goods worth 100 million? Is the captain that rich?" Li Kaitian still remembered that Song Kaiyuan and the others discussed that Han Fei might have 30 million to 40 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Logically speaking, this money should be enough. Just in case, Han Fei asked him to give him the money. In the end, he bought 100 million in one go? Was this 20 million really a lot? Han Fei said, "What are you waiting for? Lead the way." Night fell. There were no clouds or mist blocking the sky above the Martial Emperor city, and the moonlight and stars could be seen. Just when Han Fei and the others were about to arrive at the rented courtyard, suddenly Han Fei glanced at a figure in the distance. That person had no intention of concealing himself. Instead, with a single thought, he appeared before the crowd. Li Kaitian was still dumbfounded. "Who the hell is this?" However, Xia Xiaochan's face changed. Han Fei looked at the evil face and the corner of the mouth with a hint of mockery. Immediately, he was in a bad mood. Even if he just spent 100 million, it was hard to make him feel better. Han Fei said indifferently, "Long time no see. What? Are you going to attack me again in the Martial Emperor city?" The man chuckled and said, "I didn't expect that a little guy could reach such a level in such a short time. That's more than I expected." Han Fei sneered, "There are still a lot of things that are beyond your expectations. We haven't settled our grudge yet. You killed me once. Do you really think that's enough?" Chun Huangdian held his head high and smiled with his hands behind his back. "With your current strength, you're not qualified to settle the score with me. Let's talk about it after you pass the heavenly tribulation." Then, Chun Huangdian looked at Xia Xiaochan and said, "Little princess, you've squandered the resources and traveled in secret realms all these years. Is this how you repay me?" Xia Xiaochan blushed, but she still raised her head and said, "Don't think that I don't know. You have ulterior motives. You taught me and gave me resources just to wake up my mother. I'm just too weak to wake her up. Otherwise, you wouldn't have raised me." Chun Huangdian said unhurriedly, "That's really sad. It seems that women are always outgoing. You can't rely on your princess even if you have a man." As Li Kaitian listened on the side, he could feel sweat dripping down his back. He secretly swallowed his saliva. Judging from their conversation, Han Fei guessed that the man before him was Chun Huangdian of the Merman royal family. It was said that he was one of the top 10 kings in the entire chaotic ocean. Han Fei asked, "Is there anything else? Get out of my way. I don't have time to waste with you." Chun Huangdian's lips curled. It's true that you talk tough in the martial Emperor city. However, do you think you can stop me with some groundless intelligence? Han Fei said, We'll know whether or not I can stop you when the time comes. You'd better not give me a chance to grow, or I'll make you regret it. Chun Huangyan chuckled. Let's wait and see. After that, Chun Huangyan still had his hands behind his back. He disappeared from the street after 2 steps. After Chun Huangyan left, Han Fei still looked awful. Han Fei thought to himself, Did I underestimate Chun Huangyan? It seemed that the guidance from the intelligence wasn't enough. Don't worry. At least in the martial Emperor city, he won't have a chance to do anything. Han Fei slightly nodded. Okay. Ignore him. Let's see how we deal with him after the martial Emperor's inheritance. The next day, Han Fei's deeds continued to spread in the martial Emperor city. The things about the Oracle and Chun Huangyan, which were pushed by certain people and turned a blind eye, were finally spread in the martial Emperor city. The entire martial Emperor city was shocked when the news came out. For a moment, the experts in the martial Emperor city all changed their opinion about the mermaid. Before, the mermaids were powerful, but they weren't powerful enough to dominate the chaotic ocean. However, after the news spread, the image of the mermaids changed in everyone's mind. Song Kaiyuan and the others went shopping early in the morning to get some intelligence about the martial emperor's inheritance. Han Fei, on the other hand, didn't go out again. At this moment, Han Fei sensed the arrival of his clone, which meant that Shuizhan was here. However, it was understandable. The inheritance of the invincible realm was such a big event that all the heavenly talents of the 36 immortal palaces must have come. If Shuizhan didn't come, he would attract attention. However, this time, Han Fei had to find a way to take back Shuizhan's clone. After all, without a clone, Han Fei's strength was not at its peak. Early the next morning, during the day in Forge the Universe, Han Fei refined all the tendons of the Azure Dragon Big Tendon level. This was the only way for Han Fei to quickly improve his strength at present. As for other resources, he had to wait until he had enough time to complete them one by one. Today was the day when the inheritance of the invincible realm was opened. Song Kaiyuan and the others had already quietly returned to their camp, and Han Fei, relying on the intelligence, went straight to the mountains in the South City. Amidst the lush green mountains, there was a valley that looked like a plain. On the plain here, there was a black mist. When Han Fei saw the black mist, his pupils constricted slightly. Huh? Why does it look so much like the star sea mist in the 1,000-star proving ground? At this moment, there were more than 23,000 people standing in the square, ranging from beginner venerables to half-king venerables. Among these people, the number of beginner and intermediate venerables was very small, but the majority were advanced venerables and peak-level venerables. Even so, there were more than 23,000 venerables here. This number made Han Fei realize that there was no shortage of venerables in this world. The total number of venerables in the entire chaotic ocean was probably several times this number. When Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan arrived, they immediately attracted the attention of countless people. Among them, many people couldn't help but look gloomy when they saw Han Fei. For example, the Golden Crow Heaven, the Medicine King Heaven, the Dream-Weaving Heaven, the God-Refining Heaven, the Wuji Heaven, the Azura Pirates, the Red Fire Pirates, the Raiders Pirates, the Gale Pirates. These were all people who directly offended Han Fei. Too many of the 36 immortal palaces had been robbed by Han Fei. In the land of King Death, almost every family had been robbed by him. On the Snow God's temple's side, Bingxue Chu Ling looked at Han Fei, who had appeared openly. After hearing about what Han Fei had done in the past 2 days, the fact that he had spent hundreds of millions of venerables had touched the hearts of countless pirates. They couldn't wait to rob Han Fei. On the witch pirates' side, Long Wu, Pearl, and a group of venerables who had been with Han Fei before looked extremely complicated at this moment. At the beginning, how could they have thought that this guy was so terrifying? The Avenger dared to provoke everywhere and even dared to attack the Wuji fleet alone? He was simply a lunatic. And Han Fei ignored these people's gazes, stared at the black mist in front of him, and said lightly, "So, this is it?" Chapter 1839. The main reason why everyone treated Han Fei and Xia Shaochan differently was that they all knew who they were. One of them was the captain of the Avengers, who was said to be at the Pioneer Sea Realm and had fought many kings. Except for Bei Xianbing, he had never been defeated by anyone else. The other was the princess of the mermaid royal family, who was too noble. She lived a luxurious life in the royal family. Strength aside, whoever dared to touch this person would be hunted down by the entire merfolk royal family. At this moment, more than 20,000 people had gathered here just to take part in the trial of the invincible inheritance. According to the information Song Kaiyuan received, the martial emperor's inheritance was just a test and didn't involve the participants killing each other. It was said that the martial emperor's inheritance had 4 tests: luck, challenge, perception, and life and death. However, the information didn't say what the specific process was. At this moment, when everyone saw a black fog barrier appearing in broad daylight, they could roughly guess that the trial should be carried out in this fog. Swish, swish, swish. When everyone gathered, they saw 8 Pioneer Sea Realm experts appear in the air. Among them, Han Fei found that he knew 2 of them. They were Yen Meng from the Intelligence Center and Bai Yu from the Super Resource Store. Han Fei didn't know where the other 6 people were from. However, he guessed that they should be local Pioneer Sea Realm experts of the Martial Emperor City. Han Fei didn't believe that there were only 8 kings in the Martial Emperor City. However, the Martial Emperor City was only so big. They could easily search the whole city. Why did they send all the kings here? It was enough for these people to maintain order and explain the rules. Among the 8 people, there was a rather elegant young man in a light blue robe, holding a paper fan in his hand. He had the temperament of a cultured man. Xia Shaochan nodded. "I know this man. He's Zhang Luotian from the Martial Emperor City. His weapon is the Heavenly Feather Fan. It's said that his strength is in the top 10 of the Pioneer Sea Realm in the entire chaotic ocean." Han Fei's heart did a flip. Top 10? This man must be very powerful. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Can Bei Xianbing enter the top 10? Xia Shaochan shook her head. "No." Han Fei immediately understood. If that was the case, then the weight of the top 10 was extremely high. Although his battle with Bei Xianbing had only been the black mist body of the Gemini divine art, and his power hadn't been at its peak, it still wasn't something an ordinary sea expansion expert could defeat in one blow. Of course, Han Fei didn't know how powerful the top 10 were. However, if North Xianbing measured it, he wouldn't be able to reach that level even after he became a king. In the end, he had been in the sea expansion realm for tens of thousands of years. It was impossible for someone who had just broken through to surpass him. Otherwise, what was the point of the sea expansion realm? Zhang Luotian said, "Everyone, welcome to our Martial Emperor City's Millennium Grand Meeting. The Martial Emperor's inheritance is the only inheritance since the establishment of our Martial Emperor City. Up until now, no one had been able to complete the inheritance trial with 100% success. The rules were the same as before, with a total of 4 rounds of testing. The person with the best results in the trial can propose 3 conditions to the Martial Emperor City that are within our capabilities. If the result of the trial reaches 95%, you can accept the real Martial Emperor's inheritance. Now, the trial will begin in the time it takes for an incense stick to burn." Han Fei didn't know much about the trial, but with so many people here, he didn't need to panic. After all, he couldn't be worse than most people. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the trial officially began. Zhang Luotian and the others closed the way and nodded slightly. The first round of the trial is a competition of luck. Later, you will enter the black mist. Anyone who can get a golden bead from the black mist will be qualified to take the next round of the trial. Remember, the golden bead can't be snatched, so don't fight for it. In the black mist, everyone will be covered by a layer of mist. Therefore, you won't recognize each other, and you can't attack anyone else. The whole trial will last for 1 day. After you get the golden bead, you will be expelled from the black mist. When the black mist disappears, those who haven't got the golden bead will be eliminated. As soon as Zhang Luotian finished speaking, the black mist spread automatically. The 8 sea expansion monarchs shouted at the same time, "The trial begins!" Swish, swish, swish. More than 20,000 people, like moths darting into the fire, rushed to the depths of the black mist. Of course, there were some who were relatively calm, such as Han Fei and Xia Shaochan, who just walked casually into the depths of the black mist. Han Fei said, "If the result can be determined soon, it won't take a day." Han Fei thought to himself, "I've never lost the battle of Providence. When I was in the Yinyang heaven and the Waterwood heaven, my luck was very good. Those who knew me all know that I have good luck." However, what made Han Fei slightly distressed was that his clone, Shuizhan, would probably gain nothing. After all, he and Shuizhan were the same person. Theoretically speaking, he would only get 1 golden bead. Before Han Fei entered the depths of the black mist, he saw someone in front of him looking at him. He took a closer look. Wasn't that Li Xinghen? Li Xinghen said indifferently, "I'm very curious. How much energy does your secret technique consume? However, you can't just rely on secret techniques to become stronger. I'll wait for you in the 4th round of the trial." With that, Li Xinghen walked into the depths of the mist. Not far away, there was another person watching Han Fei. The man's face was quite gloomy and his hair was tied up in a braid. Obviously, he was trendy. The man said, "You're Han Fei, right? I'm Deputy Leader Wu of the Grand Purity Palace. We're on the same path. Please give me some advice in the future." Han Fei glanced at him and rolled his eyes. "I hope you die soon. If you die, I won't have any opponents." With that, Han Fei and Xia Shaochan swaggered into the depths of the black mist. Deputy Leader Wu smiled, not minding it at all. His eyes lit up, and he thought to himself, "The master of the Yinyang heaven? Him?" Taking 100 steps forward, Han Fei felt as if he were in a sea of stars. At this time, Han Fei quickly looked to the side, only to find that Xia Shaochan had disappeared at some point. In Han Fei's field of vision, Han Fei could clearly see that quite a few people nearby were also slightly confused. When he looked up again, he saw a meteor streaking across the sky. Before Han Fei moved, he saw several people around him rush towards the meteor with a swish. Han Fei shook his head speechlessly. Didn't they say that it depended on luck? It was useless to rob them. Therefore, Han Fei didn't intend to do such a meaningless thing. When he was outside, Zhang Luotian said that the martial emperor's inheritance had a completion rate. Han Fei couldn't help thinking, what completion rate is there to get the golden beads by luck? In the sea of stars in the sky, one after another, stars fell from the sky. However, none of them aroused Han Fei's interest. In the outside world, swish, 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 one trial taker after another reappeared in the wilderness outside. These people were all holding a dazzling golden bead in their hand. If Han Fei were here, he would definitely find that this thing was clearly a star bead from the 1,000-star proving ground of the Yinyang heaven. In the galaxy, Han Fei looked up. This was because he saw a shooting star flying towards him. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Just now, Zhang Luotian said that once he got the golden bead, he would appear in the outside world. However, at this moment, Han Fei hadn't figured it out yet, so he didn't raise his hand. When the golden light smashed towards him, Han Fei slightly leaned his body and quickly scanned the thing with his perception. At that moment, Han Fei finally saw it clearly. This was clearly a star bead. He had taken so many star beads that he couldn't be wrong. The one just now was a 7-star bead. Han Fei frowned slightly. Why is there a star bead here? Could it be that the 1,000-star proving ground of the Yin-Yang heaven was actually an imitation of the invincible realm's inheritance? However, after missing the 7-star bead, Han Fei didn't feel sorry at all. It was just a 7-star bead. In the Yin-Yang heaven, he wouldn't even bother to pick it up if it fell to the ground. 3 hours later, as many as 20 star beads flew past Han Fei one after another. Han Fei didn't take any of them, because there wasn't even a 9-star bead among them. The highest was only 8-star. Can I only wait for luck? Han Fei was puzzled. At this moment, Han Fei's Tao changed, and Han Fei created something out of nothing. He said, "In this world, all the luck is with me." Han Fei was just testing it with common sense. He just wanted to try it out. As a result, swish, swish, swished above the sky, tens of millions of golden meteors smashed towards where Han Fei was. F***ck. Han Fei was dumbfounded and said in surprise, "A meteor shower?" In addition to Han Fei, countless people in the firmament sea of stars looked up. Someone was surprised. There are so many golden beads. How can you not get one? Someone was shocked. Is this a grand event triggered by someone? Someone was shocked. Oh, do I have great luck and trigger a rain of golden beads? Many people rushed towards Han Fei. Most people just thought that this was a natural phenomenon, and those who saw it should have a share of it. However, a few people looked horrified and murmured, "There is a person with great luck here. Star-attracting beads are raining. Who could it be?" And Han Fei, the protagonist of this incident, when faced with such a storm of star beads, his body was moving in an extremely weak posture. Han Fei spread out his soul and scanned this place with the method of nuance. Swish, swish, swish. When the densely packed star beads swept past him, Han Fei didn't even make a move for dozens of seconds. The others who had just arrived were dumbfounded and filled with disbelief upon seeing this. Wow! Such a magnificent spectacle is being triggered by one person? Someone made up his mind and stepped forward to snatch it. However, in a moment of carelessness, a fiery light was shattered. His body and divine soul were instantly pierced through. Many people who were about to make a move were too scared to move when they saw this scene. Just when more and more people were watching, suddenly Han Fei reached out to the void and encountered the first 9-star bead. However, just when Han Fei was about to touch the 9-star pearl, suddenly, Han Fei secretly pinched his fingers with his other hand. His eyes immediately swept to the sky. There was a resplendent star bead there, and a gentle starlight quietly appeared. Han Fei immediately withdrew his hand, reached out to the void, and pinched a bead that was not golden but shining with white light. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1840. The moment Han Fei held the bead in his hand, he saw golden light pouring into it. The white bead's color changed. Not only did it turn gold, but it also had a 10-star symbol on it. This was the first time that Han Fei had seen a 10-star mark. Even though he had obtained all the star beads in the Yin-Yang heaven, he had never seen a 10-star star bead. Besides, when Han Fei took this star bead, a voice seemed to appear in his head. Trial of Providence, 100% completion rate. Swish! Before Han Fei could be surprised, the space in front of him disappeared without a trace. Han Fei's eyes suddenly lit up. It was the valley and the wilderness where he came from. After coming out, Han Fei looked down and found that the star mark on the star bead in his hand had disappeared. It seemed to have been hidden. Although Han Fei was surprised that he got a 100% completion rate, he still looked around for Xia Xiaochan. Seeing that she hadn't come out yet, Han Fei glanced at the others. Han Fei saw Song Kaiyuan, Jian Hui, and Song Hongyu from the dragon-taming heaven, but he didn't see any other acquaintances. At this time, people appeared in this open space from time to time. Half an hour later, he saw Xia Xiaochan appear in the open space with a swish. As soon as Xia Shaochan came out, she looked around and found Han Fei. Immediately, Xia Shaochan trotted to Han Fei. 9 stars. Is this the highest or the lowest? Noticing that there were 8 half-kings here, Han Fei said with a smile, I'm also a 9-star. Even if I'm not the highest, I don't think anyone among these people is higher than a 9-star. What was the role of the martial emperor city? Han Fei wasn't sure. In short, the completion rate was not set by these people. It seemed that it was determined by another kind of power. Therefore, all he needed to do was to continue the trial. There was no need to say it now. While Han Fei and Xia Shaochan were talking about how he only got a 9-star bead, Zhang Luotian and the other kings in the Pioneer Sea realm were also secretly discussing. Zhang Luotian said, 9 stars of providence. No wonder she's the princess of the mermaid royal family. Han Fei is also quite good. Unfortunately, he's still a little short of perfection. Yan Meng said, 10 stars only exist in legends. We've never seen one. In this battle for providence, the top prodigies should all be 9-star prodigies. I wonder, how many 9-star cultivators will there be this time? By you. This is only the first round of training, there are many who have come later, let's wait and see. Suddenly, someone asked, then what are Han Fei and Xia Shaochan doing? Everyone saw that Han Fei and Xia Shaochan took out a big pot. The pot was filled with the flesh of a king and was currently being cooked. All the kings were speechless. You're eating here on such a serious occasion? Was this really appropriate? However, Song Kaiyuan and the others who had eaten Han Fei's hot pot couldn't help but turn green when they saw Han Fei take out the big pot. How can a captain be so arrogant? How can you eat under such circumstances? Half a day later, slurp. Han Fei took a bite of lobster meat. At this time, there were already quite a few people coming out. Many venerables looked at Han Fei and Xia Shaochan, who were eating, dumbfounded. Someone was speechless. They're doing this on purpose to disturb our thoughts. Someone exclaimed, they're cooking the flesh of the kings? These 2 people are too extravagant. Most people had to calm down and close their sense of smell when they smelled the rich fragrance, so as not to disturb their state of mind. During this period, Han Fei was also surprised. For some reason, his clone, Xuezhan, also came out. This meant that Xuezhan also got a star bead. Xuebingxue was also very confused. She looked at Han Fei and then at Xuezhan, thinking, isn't this golden bead supposed to be a test of providence? How could one person get 2 test results? 1 day later. In this field, a total of more than 17,000 people came out of the black mist. In other words, in the first round, which was theoretically the simplest test, more than 6,000 people were eliminated. This was just the first round. Zhang Luotian raised his hand, and the black mist slowly disappeared. In another open space, the remaining more than 6,000 people appeared uniformly. Most of these people didn't look very good. Those who could come to Martial Emperor City to participate in the Martial Emperor's inheritance trial were at least carefully selected. Many people felt that they still had a lot of potential, but they just had to be eliminated. Among the 8 kings, someone shouted, those who are eliminated, leave the field within 100 seconds. After the eliminated people were eliminated, in front of the crowd, not far away, 4 gates appeared in a row in the form of void vortexes. These gates were still colorful. When the vortexes rotated, they caused strange ripples of light, which looked white, blue, red, and dark red. Zhang Luotian nodded slightly to the other kings and then said, in the next trial, most of you will be eliminated. However, it doesn't matter. Once you feel that you are in a life and death crisis, remember to crush the golden bead in your hand. Otherwise, you may really die in it. Everyone couldn't help but look at the golden bead in their hands. At this moment, the golden bead had merged with his divine will. As long as he willed it, it would appear in his hand in its entirety. What made them look serious was that there was a chance of dying in the second trial. But with the golden bead, it shouldn't be a big problem. But some people still didn't understand the foregate. Someone said, "Lord King, which gate should we enter?" This time, it was Yen Meng's turn to speak. She said, "You need to ask the golden bead in your hand which gate you should enter. Take out the golden bead first, and go to the gate that you feel is the most attractive to you." The crowd hurried to give it a try. Someone immediately got feedback. "I am the first white gate. The calling is very strong." "I am the first gate too." "I am the second gate. I only took a 4-star golden bead. I thought it would be very low. I think it should be better than the first gate." "Yes. I am the second gate too." You all are?" Just when most people were summoned by the first and second gates, someone suddenly said, "Look, Nangong Yu from the Dream Sky is walking to the third gate. Oh, Li Xuanfeng from the Wind Slasher Sky is also the third gate." "What? The Taishan Heavenly Sword is actually the fourth gate." At this time, in the eyes of the trial takers, the difference of one gate represented the difference in talent, luck, and quality of the star bead. Xia Xiaochan looked at Han Fei and said, "I can sense the third gate and the fourth gate, but the third gate has the strongest reaction." Han Fei held the star bead and only felt the call from the fourth gate. He didn't sense the third gate at all. However, the two of them saw Li Xinghan, Wu Duoshou, Jian Hui, Song Kaiyuan, Li Xuanfeng, Wu Hao, and Song Long all went to the fourth gate. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Your talent and bloodline are much stronger than theirs. So, they should also have a strong reaction to the third gate." However, because they sensed the fourth gate at the same time, they chose the fourth gate. If I'm right, this second gate is also used to kill people. If there's really danger, crush the star bead. Don't hesitate. Xia Xiaochan nodded. "Then let's go. I also choose the fourth gate." Han Fei nodded slightly, but his eyes kept inadvertently glancing at the fourth gate. Han Fei always felt that he was a person who got the 10-star bead. Didn't he get any special treatment? How could he show his difference with the 9-star bead? Unfortunately, there were only 4 gates, and Han Fei had no choice but to enter the fourth gate. Except for the 36 mysterious heavens, the situation of the mermaids, the 100 demons, and the seabed human race was roughly the same as that of the human race. Those who could enter the fourth gate were few and far between. In the chaotic ocean, there were a total of 167 people who entered the fourth gate. This number was simply too small in the huge base of 23,000 trial takers, not even 1%. Among the heavenly talents, they were also 1 in 100. The last time Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan entered the Black Mist, they were in separate states. This time, the two deliberately went in hand. However, when Han Fei appeared in the world in this gate, he was still separated from Xia Xiaochan. However, Han Fei didn't care very much. If Xia Xiaochan's strength really broke out, few people could resist her. Han Fei looked around and found that there was a calm lake in front of him. The full moon in the sky was only a few crescents, and under his feet was the boundless water without even a ripple. Only when he stepped on it would there be a few ripples. Han Fei wanted to release his perception, but he immediately found that his perception only had a range of 1,000 kilometers. Wait, Han Fei froze for a moment and immediately found that something was wrong. It was not that his perception only had a range of 1,000 kilometers, but that this world only had a range of 1,000 kilometers. In the middle of the water, Han Fei saw a young man. The young man was sitting cross-legged on the water like a statue. Looking at his face, this person was very ordinary, with a square face and a fairly burly figure. At this moment, he was too quiet, as if in an epiphany. However, when Han Fei came here, the young man suddenly opened his eyes. "You're here? Beat me and you'll pass this level. But I won't show any mercy." Second, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1841. From the looks of it, it seemed that this trial was undoubtedly going to be a battle. Han Fei guessed that since he had encountered such a battle, other people must have encountered it too. However, had he ever been afraid of anyone in the Half-King realm? None of them. The aura of the Half-King realm from the young man in front of him couldn't be deceived. Han Fei wondered who this person was. Was he a top heavenly talent cultivated by the martial Emperor's city? However, he didn't think so. If all the heavenly talents in the martial Emperor's city were at this level, wouldn't there be more than 17,000 opponents among the 17,000 people? So, where was he now? Two kitchen knives appeared in Han Fei's hands. Even if he didn't use the power of the Great Path, he had already reached the limit of the Half-King realm. It was almost comparable to the Sea Expansion realm. There was only one opponent. Why did he have to go all out? Swish, although he didn't intend to use the power of the Great Path, Han Fei didn't underestimate his opponent. The first move was the Yin-Yang reincarnation knife. The two knives slashed out, and Han Fei's figure instantly soared to the extreme. Like a streak of stars, he waved the knives with both hands, and two sky-reaching knife lights directly tore the calm lake surface for thousands of kilometers. In this scene, a terrifying knife light tens of thousands of meters high slid across the water. Because the speed was so fast, it seemed to form two air walls. Han Fei thought that less than 10 people in the same realm as him could take such an attack head-on. However, the young man on the opposite side suddenly grinned, revealing a sneer. Pop! A golden ripple formed in the shape of a ripple and blocked in front of him. His aura soared and soared into the sky. Void God Barrier. Clang! 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 Both the Yin-Yang reincarnation knife and the two draw techniques exploded at the same time. After the young man blocked Han Fei's attack, a condensed void barrier rose in front of him. Around him, the blow just now caused the ochre-red murderous intent to fluctuate, sweeping the entire lake surface. At this time, the young man's power had completely burst out. The clothes on his arms exploded, the red silk around his neck flew, the surrounding lake water swirled, and the void was still. Han Fei's attack had completely disappeared. He said, "I'm still not strong enough. There's no limit to my strength. I can still become stronger." Roar. Han Fei was shocked and felt that something was wrong. Although this man said that he wouldn't hold back, he didn't seem to care. However, the current situation felt more like they were challenging him. He wanted to become stronger, and his obsession had reached the point of madness. Swish! Suddenly, the young man's figure disappeared. Han Fei was shocked. So fast. Han Fei's eyesight was already extremely fast. He saw a figure coming at him. However, the opponent's speed was too fast, and his hands were unable to counterattack in time. Before his hands could react, Han Fei's soul did. The mystic armor array suddenly appeared. This was the fastest method Han Fei could set up. Crack, boom. Han Fei felt as if he had been blown away by a king's blow. That feeling was like the attack of the everlasting sky crane, not the attack of the profound ice. In short, it felt like he had been defeated in an instant. Fuse. In the process of flying backward, Han Fei had no time to care about how many bones he had broken and directly chose to fuse with Little Black and Little White. As soon as the fusion was completed and the Yin-Yang divine eyes had just appeared, he saw a fist mark coming down from above. Shoot! At that moment, Han Fei's body shone with golden light, and the invincible will formed a giant shield in front of him. Crack! Bm! It was exactly the same scene. Han Fei was flying much faster than lightning at this moment. In an instant, the fist mark above blasted the water surface, causing waves of thousands of meters on the surface of the lake. Puff! A mouthful of golden blood spurted out. Han Fei was horrified. Son of AB*TCH, I underestimated the enemy. Han Fei didn't expect that there was such a strong master in the Half-King realm. As the saying went, when strong masters fought, one careless move and the whole game would be lost. He was suppressed by the opponent, which led to the current situation where he couldn't react. Ho! At this moment, the 100-beast soul-devouring roar burst out. The man's fist mark arrived again. It was about to hit him, but it paused for a moment. This time was extremely short, so short that it was almost negligible. Swish, swish, all of a sudden, dozens of projections appeared, and Han Fei took this opportunity to retreat. The power of the Great Path ran, and his combat power soared. As for those projections, they were all destroyed in an instant. So strong. Han Fei knew that he had met the strongest opponent in his life. Even when fighting against a sea-opening realm master, he had never felt so powerless. However, today, this state was forced out by an enemy in the same realm. Han Fei had never been so nervous. At the moment when he blocked the opponent with the power of projections, he moved his body out and hurriedly ran the Great Path. His combat power soared crazily, and the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique fell. However, the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique also took time. At this time, the yin-yang reincarnation knife that had just burst out appeared again. Han Fei took this opportunity to directly crush two ultra-quality divine weapons and continued to attack with the yin-yang reincarnation knife. Even in this situation, the young man still tried to appear in front of him in an instant, facing the yin-yang reincarnation knife with both fists at the same time. Although Han Fei's strength hadn't risen to its peak, how could he admit defeat now? He also made a seal with both fists, and the invincible fist mark blasted at the opponent's fist mark. Rumble, the surface of the lake exploded in an instant, and waves splashed all over the sky. Han Fei was sent flying hundreds of miles away by the opponent's fists, while the young man only retreated more than 10 meters. Gotcha! Judging from the sound, Han Fei's 10 fingers were broken by the punch. Han Fei's face was extremely gloomy. It was the first time that he had been so embarrassed. He was caught and hit hard for the first time. If he were an ordinary person, he would have been beaten to the ground. However, who was Han Fei? He had the indestructible golden body, and his strength was comparable to that of a king. A Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique fell, but it failed to illuminate Han Fei. Because just when Han Fei was about to be illuminated, he was blasted away by the opposite guy. However, with the operation of the Great Tao, Han Fei's strength became stronger again. Han Fei roared, "Come on!" This time, that person did not chase after him. Instead, he stood still. He said, "The power of the Great Tao is quite powerful. It seems that there is finally someone who can make me challenge my limit." Han Fei's eyelids twitched when he heard this. While the man didn't attack, the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique fell on his body, and the bones in his body were cracking. His 10 fingers, hand bones, ribs, and the separated soul and power were all returning. Han Fei said, "Brother, before we fight, can I ask you, who are you?" "Who am I?" "You can call me Martial Emperor." Han Fei. Han Fei was speechless. F***ck, even if you're joking. Is this the level of a martial emperor? Who are you kidding? However, the man immediately returned to the battle. He said, "Let the battle begin." And Han Fei, after only one Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique, immediately changed the Great Tao to the Road of Invincibility and the Great Tao of Time. Together with the Great Tao of Body, this should be his strongest configuration at present. With a thought, the spiritual energy around Han Fei turned into a time barrier. Han Fei drew out a knife, held the time barrier in his hand, and instantly fought with the man. However, when the two of them fought, Han Fei found that this person's speed was too fast and his battle power was too strong. Even with the help of Han Fei's Taoism and the super combat power of the Pioneer Sea Realm, the man could still catch up with him. When Han Fei used a knife, he found that using a weapon seemed to affect his speed. Even if he used time acceleration, it required a high degree of control over the power of time. He had to divert his attention to control the flow of time while fighting against such a powerhouse. After a few seconds, although he didn't lose, he didn't have the slightest advantage. Immediately, Han Fei gave up the intention of using the Blade of Time to attack the opponent. Instead, He simply used the time technique to accelerate his battle speed and slow down the opponent's attack frequency. Even so, there were only bang 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 in just a few seconds. The two might have fought tens of thousands of times. The spiritual energy and energy in Han Fei's body had been emptied as early as the second. But fortunately, Han Fei had a reserve of spiritual energy, and his energy absorption speed was extremely fast. After about 5 seconds in a row, Han Fei felt that there was no part of his body that didn't hurt. Seeing this situation, Han Fei didn't dare to be distracted. The 2 wisps of chaotic energy immediately spread in his body, and his power increased again. However, seeing that Han Fei had used the chaotic energy, the young man didn't hold back at all and seemed to explode the chaotic energy crazily. The 2 fists collided, and the surface of the lake exploded in an instant, and the 2 of them hit the barrier. And the power of the 2 wisps of chaotic energy in Han Fei's body was used up in an instant. Because of the use of the chaotic energy, above the water, within 1,000 kilometers, violent energy swept across the world. To put it bluntly, if a venerable below the peak level of the venerable dared to be placed in this environment, the probability of dying was almost 100%. When the invincible golden body was used to the extreme, the degree of spiritual energy disassembly was comprehended to 100%, and the Tao was condensed in an instant. He still couldn't win this battle. Han Fei's heart sank. The strength of the person opposite him seemed to be improving all the time. The more powerful she became, the more powerful he became. Why should he do that? The 3rd time. Please vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 1842. Bam! 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 The battle between Han Fei and the martial emperor had lasted for nearly 10 minutes. Now, Han Fei had reached the limit of his combat power. A blue halo appeared, time flowed, and Han Fei's strength returned to the peak. Of course, Han Fei spent 20 wisps of chaotic gas. In such a high-intensity battle, even if Han Fei didn't want to waste this power, he had to. If his strength was not at the peak, he would lose in a single blow. F***ck, is the martial emperor's inheritance so difficult? When he came in this time, Zhang Luotian and the others didn't say how long the second trial would last. Han Fei didn't think it would only be 20 minutes, right? But if they were all opponents of this level, Han Fei couldn't help but wonder who could persist to the end? If even he couldn't, he really couldn't imagine how many people could. However, Han Fei didn't know that just 5 seconds after he went in, dozens or even hundreds of people appeared on the field outside almost at the same time. By the 5th breath, the number of people who had appeared in the wilderness outside had reached close to 5,000. At this moment, everyone's faces were filled with lingering fear. Someone was shocked. So strong, too strong. I didn't even see that person. I only felt that the breath of death had been enveloping me. Too strong. I only took one punch and my body almost collapsed. That person was invincible. By the way, did you see who that person was? I just saw a black shadow. Someone was speechless. What are you looking at? He crushed me in every aspect. Except for passive resistance, I couldn't even find a chance to attack. Zhang Luotian and the others stood in the sky as if they had expected this. Someone said, "Why don't we make a bet on how long the longest one can last?" I bet 20 minutes. Bai Yu said grumpily, "Ling Yuan, do you think you're so great just because you opened a casino? Do you know how to gamble? This martial emperor's inheritance is a big deal. You'd better stay put." The man called Ling Yuan shrugged and said, "I didn't say anything wrong. This level is too difficult. In the past tens of thousands of years, no one has ever lasted more than 100 breaths against a miniature martial emperor." Zhang Luotian said unhurriedly, "The martial king once set a battle record of 82 breaths. This time, it could be considered as a group of heroes rising together." Here, there were 3 experts from the Invincible Road: the Mermaid Royal Family, the 100 Demon Clan, and the human clan at the bottom of the sea had all sent their top talent. There should be some who can hold on for less than 50 breaths of time. There should be some who can hold on for 30 breaths. 30 breaths? Ling Yuan curled his lips and said, "In any case, I only lasted for 24 breaths of time back then. It's too difficult. I can't beat it." Yen Meng, those who can last for 20 breaths have a high chance of becoming a king. Let's wait and see. Meanwhile, battles were raging in the world behind the door. When the self-proclaimed martial emperor saw Han Fei use the time art, he couldn't help but say, "The time great Tao." He was just stalling for time. How can a battle between experts be dragged out to determine victory or defeat? Roar! At that moment, the martial emperor seemed to have exploded. A big Xiantian bird was hanging in the air. In Han Fei's eyes, the wings of the big bird were shining with golden light. When its feathers moved away, Han Fei actually saw a human face on the bird's head. Shoot! A human-faced bird with a golden-winged bird? Han Fei couldn't help but swallow. If it was what he understood. It was said that this bird ate dragons, and it could eat 500 dragons a day. Was this a spiritual beast a joke? Hiss! At this moment, Han Fei regretted leaving the Emperor's sparrow in the yin-yang heaven. However, Little Black and Little White hadn't become venerables yet. Even if they fused, they might not be able to defeat this martial emperor. However, to Han Fei's surprise, there was no information about the golden-winged bird in his eyes. In this case, it meant that the battle he was currently experiencing was probably fake. Swish, 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 while Han Fei was guessing, the martial emperor didn't stop. The golden-winged bird was fast, so at this moment, the martial emperor's speed suddenly soared a lot. BM, 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 Han Fei and the martial emperor completely turned into infinite afterimages. It was normal for them to launch 1,000 attacks in an instant. Han Fei was horrified. "No, I can't keep up. My body's reaction speed can't keep up." The limit of the law of time was broken by this person. So strong, BM. Bam. Bam. In an instant, Han Fei was bombarded hundreds of times, and muffled sounds came from his body. Han Fei was seized by the martial emperor, and he was about to launch a series of tens of thousands of attacks. Han Fei's eyes were filled with fury. The power of the ancient, desolate war body broke out. From the beginning, Han Fei had been cultivating a breath of fighting intent. At this moment, although this breath of fighting intent hadn't been fully cultivated, Han Fei couldn't care less. If he didn't use it now, he would lose. To the bystanders, this was a test. But for him, this was a test from the Void Temple. If he couldn't pass the test, he would miss the opportunity to join the Void Temple. Therefore, no matter how much he had to pay, he had to win this battle. Han Fei didn't know that people were guessing how long he could last. When the power of fighting intent burst out, Han Fei's heart did a flip. "Clone, come here." On the other side, the snow battle body that was about to collapse suddenly disappeared without a trace. Almost at the same time, the power of the clone returned. At this moment, Han Fei's strength reached the peak state. With a thought, Han Fei's clone returned. At this moment, together with his original body that had almost been unable to make any progress, Han Fei had reached his strongest state. A string of information flashed in his eyes. Owner Han Fei level greater than 89 Half King. C 10,000 Family Tree 2720986 Chaotic Gas greater than 2,276 Wisps Spiritual Power greater than 323,446 Perception Range greater than 220,000 kilometers Strength greater than 39,999 Wave. First Spiritual Heritage Unknown. Second Spiritual Heritage Unknown. First Spiritual Beast Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish Level 79. Second Spiritual Beast King Sparrow Level 78. Main Art Void Arrival Level 7 of Void Fishing King Level Divine Quality. Although there was still a lot of room for growth in his soul power, Han Fei had reached the limit in terms of strength. This was a shackle that was already difficult to break. However, at this moment, Han Fei activated the power of the Great Way, activated the ancient desolate war body, activated the invincible realm, and assisted by the art of time. Even if he encountered Bei Xianbing again, Han Fei would still dare to fight her. Let's fight! Bam! 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 Maybe it was because Han Fei had a more thorough understanding of the power of the Great Way, but when the two of them fought again, Han Fei could actually keep up with the martial emperor's speed. The martial emperor roared, "Fight! I am the strongest!" Han Fei bared his teeth. "With me here, who do you think you are?" The martial emperor scoffed. "I told you that the art of time is just to buy time." In the outside world, at this moment 2 minutes had passed. However, Zhang Luotian and the others became solemn. Yan Meng said, "There are 302 people who haven't come out yet. Most of them should have died. Among them, there should be less than 10 people who are very likely to really last more than 2 minutes. Among them, there should be Yu Lai and Xia Shaochan from the Mermaid clan, Bai Liluo from the 100 Demons clan, Mu Qingxue from the Seabed Human clan, Yi Fan, Zhang Heng, and Zheng Shuang from the Martial Emperor City, Wu Taitu, Li Xinghen, and Han Fei from the 36 Black Heavens. Xue Zhan should have died." They couldn't help but look at Yan Meng. "How could you not know who Xue Zhan was?" Yan Meng replied, and they nodded slightly to show that they understood. Just 2 minutes later, Bai Liluo and Mu Qingxue appeared almost at the same time. Suddenly, there was an uproar in the crowd. Almost all the people had come out. There were very few who could persist until now. Not even half a breath's time after these two people appeared, 2 more people appeared. Most people didn't know these 2 people. However, the people of the Martial Emperor City knew these 2 people. They were the top heavenly talents of the Martial Emperor City, Zhang Heng and Zheng Shuang. Another 4 breaths later, 2 figures appeared with a whoosh. Taking a closer look, it was Li Xinghen and a guy that no one was familiar with. Someone wondered. Li Xinghen came out and persisted for a full 3 minutes. This time, I'm afraid he will enter the top 5. But who is the person next to him? Someone said, "It's normal that you don't know that person. This person is a local heavenly talent of the Martial Emperor City. His name is Yi Fan, and he is one of the few famous disciples of the Martial Emperor City. It's a pity that even a local heavenly talent of the Martial Emperor City can't win first place." Someone sighed. "Rival Wu hasn't appeared yet." Someone suddenly said, "That Han Fei hasn't appeared either." While the crowd was discussing, 3 minutes later, with a swish, a person appeared on the field with a man's qi and blood soaring into the sky. "It's him, Rival Wu of the Grand Purity Palace. 38 minutes. I can't even hold on for 3 minutes. How did he persist for 3 minutes? In the crowd, 2 people scoffed. Who else could it be but Bai Muling and Situ Yuhong? Bai Muling said, "Our mermaid clans Yulai and Princess Xia Shaochan haven't come out yet." Situ Yuhong said, "With the princess's strength, it's more than enough for her to persist for 50 minutes. How can this rival Wu compare to her?" As soon as the 2 said that, a colorful light appeared. It was a male mermaid. Instantly, Bai Muling and Situ Yuhong heaved sighs of relief. The boasting that he had just made was about to explode. Even the 8 kings looked solemn at this moment. Everyone couldn't help but look at Zhang Luotian and said in shock, "Old Zhang, how long did you last? 3 minutes, right?" Zhang Luotian also looked solemn. "This time, the strength of the trial takers is completely beyond our expectations. What's more surprising is that someone can actually hold on until now." Second, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1843. No matter how shocked the outside world was, at this moment, there were still people fighting in the door world. Cicada, at this moment, Xia Shaochan burst out her strongest strength. In the state of the heavenly cicada transformation, it was impossible to see Xia Shaochan with the naked eye of the same realm. Because of the ability of the shadow shrimp, Xia Shaochan could turn into a shadow and even control the shadow of the martial emperor. However, this kind of combat method had been broken by the martial emperor in the 28th minute. No matter how Xia Shaochan turned into a shadow, it couldn't be separated from the use of soul power. The martial emperor's combat power was strong, and his soul was also extremely powerful. He turned the power of his soul into a soul body and fought with the shadow. Originally, this kind of battle would be over in less than 10 minutes. However, Xia Shaochan still had the ability of the heavenly cicada transformation. Xia Shaochan, whose core of combat was speed and explosive power, was so fast that Han Fei didn't dare to underestimate her after she displayed the heavenly cicada transformation. Therefore, others had no idea that in all the battles, the only one who could fight with the martial emperor was Xia Shaochan. Unfortunately, others couldn't watch the battle, so they didn't know the details of the battle. However, if Han Fei could watch here, he would definitely find that the martial emperor fighting with Xia Shaochan was much weaker than the one fighting with him. If he observed carefully, he would definitely find that the martial emperor fighting with different people was stronger than the trial taker. Basically, the trial takers were in a state of being suppressed. Xia Shaochan was the same. It seemed that she was fighting back and forth, but in fact, she was still being suppressed. And what they were competing for was the ability to resist pressure. After more than 10 minutes, Xia Shaochan felt that she had consumed too much energy. If she continued to fight like this, she wouldn't be able to win at all. She immediately gave up absorbing power, gritted her teeth, and crushed the star bead. She thought to herself, I shouldn't be too far behind. After all, this person is too strong, ridiculously strong. When Xia Shaochan appeared on the field, she only saw people everywhere. Countless experts of the merman race let out a roar that was as loud as a tsunami. A mermaid said, Your Highness, you're so powerful. You've held on for 10 minutes, which is unprecedented. Look, our mermaid royal family is the real strongest race after all. Who can compete with us? Ha! Duan Wu, Li Xinghen, I'm the only one who can be called the strongest. Even Li Xinghen, Duan Wu, and the others looked complicated at this moment. How could a martial monarch hold out for such a long time? However, after seeing Xia Shaochan come out, very few people immediately thought of Han Fei. In fact, someone had already asked this. Someone from the Snow God Palace said, Your master, Saint Child, has not appeared yet. Could it be that Lord Holy Child is a hidden peerless genius? Saint Person. However, Saint Person. She only lasted for 24 breaths of time. When she came out and didn't see Xuezhan, she knew that Xuezhan had most likely returned to his original body. If the battle this time, if this avatar were to engage in a life and death battle, it would probably be on par with him. Therefore, when she didn't see the doppelganger come out after waiting for 30 seconds, she knew it was time to inform the people of the Snow God's temple of the fact that Xuezhan had died. Bai Muling and Situ Yuhong also realized that something was wrong. Although they hoped that Han Fei died in this door, they had seen Han Fei's strength. It would be strange if that guy died. Xia Shaochan looked around. Seeing that Han Fei hadn't come out yet, she grabbed a mermaid and asked, How many people haven't come out? The man hurriedly said, Your Highness, I don't know. We didn't count them before. However, Yenmeng said, So far, a total of 293 people haven't come out. Among them, the vast majority had probably perished. In a moment the door will close. If anyone hasn't come out by then, they will have died. Xia Xiaochan's face changed slightly. Han Fei couldn't have died. He had so many tricks up his sleeve. The martial emperor might not be his match. In the door, Han Fei had consumed 100 wisps of chaotic energy. He had been fighting for about 10 minutes. At this moment, Han Fei was crazy, and the martial emperor was crazy too. The two of them were locked in a fierce battle. Even though Han Fei felt pain all over his body, He had no chance or time to switch to the great path of heavenly enlightenment to heal himself. However, the pain in his body made Han Fei realize that he might not be able to hold on for long. If he didn't use the great path of heavenly enlightenment, he would probably collapse. However, Han Fei couldn't admit defeat in this trial. This was related to whether he could enter the Void Temple or not. I must win, I must win. The divine weapon is waiting for me, and a lot of people. Oh no. A lot of senior brothers and sisters are waiting for me in the void. I can't lose this battle. While Han Fei was using time reversal again, he thought to himself, why is this martial emperor so strong? Every time I get stronger, he gets stronger? Besides, why didn't I see through the information of the golden-winged rock just now? Could it be that this trial was fake? Or is it because it's the projection of the martial emperor? That's not right. If it's fake, why do I feel it so clearly? Furthermore, he could even communicate with the martial monarch verbally? No, I can't go on like this. I have to test this person's strength again. Otherwise, if I just rely on the great path of time, I may not be able to defeat this guy even when my chaotic energy is exhausted. Under the blue halo, Han Fei's eyes flickered. I have to try to see why this person is so strong. Immediately, Han Fei withdrew the power of the Great Path and restored his original combat power. Anyway, if he couldn't, he would be instantly blown up. At that time, he could use the Great Path of Time and return to the peak of his combat power. However, when Han Fei's strength plummeted, a surprising scene happened. Although the martial emperor still attacked quickly, it was far from being able to kill him instantly. Boom! Han Fei's violent blow made the two retreat. Damn! Did I waste 100 strands of chaotic energy? Han Fei didn't feel good at all. He should have discovered it earlier. How can someone always get stronger and stronger than you? If he is really so strong, why didn't he kill me at the beginning? It turned out that the strength of this martial emperor was just a little bit stronger than his current state. Therefore, he felt that no matter what state he was in, he was always weaker than him. Therefore, even if Han Fei didn't use the power of the Great Path, he wouldn't be really defeated. Those 100 strands of chaotic energy were wasted, weren't they? As soon as he discovered this, Han Fei already felt that something was wrong. This fight might be real, but the opponent's strength was definitely not that strong. Just now, he was ridiculously strong. If this martial emperor was really so strong that he could break through the chaotic ocean as a half-king realm, then wouldn't the king realm become a decoration? Besides, the golden-winged rock didn't show any information, which made Han Fei realize that no matter how real what he was experiencing now was, it was definitely not real. Then he thought of the original question. No matter how strong this martial emperor was, how could he have thousands of clones to fight everyone at the same time? If he was really a venerable emperor, maybe he had this ability. However, the martial emperor had long been a legend in the martial emperor city. All that was left was just a test. The more Han Fei thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. The violence in his eyes was getting fainter and fainter. Suddenly, Han Fei seemed to understand something. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he dispersed the great path of time and no longer used spiritual energy. Like an ordinary person, Han Fei stood quietly on the river. In an instant, the surrounding scene seemed to have changed. The waves that had been surging in the world like water curtains calmed down in an instant. Under Han Fei's body, the ground was as smooth as a mirror. The next moment, when a fist shadow attacked him, Han Fei was calm, only to see that the fist shadow passed through his body. Then, on the opposite side of Han Fei, a smile slowly appeared on the face of the martial emperor. You got it. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up. It was at that moment that I realized that you are not a martial emperor. You are a thought in my heart. Han Fei raised his head and said confidently, Ha, in everyone's heart, there is an invincible shadow. Even if you have mastered the art of invincibility, you will still feel that there will be someone stronger than you in this world. The martial emperor opposite him said, "Isn't that right?" Han Fei sneered. In terms of realms, there is indeed an insurmountable gap. No matter how strong a half-king is, he can't defeat an emperor. This is what most people think. Therefore, it is impossible for them to become invincible. However, it wasn't until just now that I realized that the so-called invincibility is not really invincible among the thousands of races in the sea or in this world. Turns out that invincibility has always been your own invincibility. It is a kind of Taoist heart that is fearless of the world. When Han Fei said this, on the other side of his green jade stone bridge, the road of invincibility occupied by the great path of invincibility slowly melted. In the end, the melted road of invincibility turned into a golden mist and drilled into Han Fei's body. And Han Fei's heart was slowly plated with a layer of gold. With the beating of his heart, golden halos rushed to the center of Han Fei's eyebrows. Dum, 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 dum on the center of Han Fei's eyebrows, an eye slowly opened, becoming Han Fei's third eye. At the moment this eye appeared, the image of the martial emperor opposite began to disappear. The second update. Please vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 1844. Outside. It had been more than 150 minutes since the start of the second trial. After these 100 breaths, many people had a premonition that something was about to happen. Someone sighed. He hasn't come out yet. There's no need to look anymore. Those people must have died in it. Someone said, I believe he said he could hold on for 30 minutes. After seeing the mermaid princess, I also believe he could hold on for 80 minutes. However, it's almost 160 minutes. It's impossible. Someone shook his head. That Han Fei of the Avengers is strong, but he can't be this strong, can he? The challenge inside is extremely difficult. I guess he can't come out. Someone sneered. What do you know? This challenge is not over yet. Although I don't know Han Fei well, I think he will win. At least, he can kidnap the mermaid princess. Who else can do this? Xia Xiaochan was calm at the moment. She was very sure that Han Fei couldn't have died. They were both 9-star beads, so the person Han Fei met should be on par with her. Logically speaking, Xia Xiaochan didn't think that person could beat Han Fei. She even thought that Han Fei had a higher chance of winning. The reason why he hadn't come out yet could only mean that Han Fei was still fighting. Ever since he was a child, Han Fei had always been the best when it came to endurance. This time was no exception. Long Wu and Pearl of the Witch Pirates, as well as a few others, had some doubts because of the previous battle. After the incident in the glass sky, at least the 4 generals knew Han Fei's identity. The only ones who had contact with Han Fei were Long Wu and Pearl. Both of them lasted for more than 20 minutes. However, they only lasted for 21 breaths before they were defeated. Now, the two looked at each other. Long Wu looked at Pearl and asked, Is he really okay? Pearl shook her head slightly. You've seen it yourself. You should know that in this world, there will always be someone stronger than you. I don't think he has died. Suddenly, someone said, Look, the shadow of the door is beginning to fade. Someone exclaimed, Oh, he hasn't come out yet. I'm afraid there's no chance, right? Even Zhang Luotian and the others couldn't help but frown. Could it be that they had misjudged the situation? Would Han Fei really die here? Pooh! In the midst of the crowd's astonishment, a pair of hands reached out from the rift of the 4th door. There's someone else inside? At this moment, Xia Xiaochan smiled. I knew this guy would be fine. Rushing out at the last second was too despicable. Han Fei even opened the black fog gate and stepped out, looking very calm. There was a slight smile on his face. However, the third eye on his forehead had disappeared without a trace. At this moment, the hearts of Zhang Luotian and the others jolted. Everyone looked at each other, unable to conceal the shock in their hearts. Ling Yuan said, He broke the record. Han Fei was merely the current palace master of the yin-yang heavens. How could he be so tyrannical? He actually broke the record of a martial king. Yan Meng said, "This is a good thing. It means that the martial emperor's inheritance this time is very interesting. It also means that this person is extremely powerful." Zhang Luotian, interesting. The only pity is that he didn't take a 10-star golden bead. Everyone shrugged slightly, and Bai Yu said, "Maybe he still has a chance." In the end, the exact number of completion points will depend on the next 2 trials. After Han Fei came out, he immediately found Xia Shaochan. Under the gaze of Sword Regret, Song Kaiyuan and countless others, he clapped hands with Xia Shaochan and announced his victory. Xia Shaochan said to him via voice transmission, "That martial emperor was so powerful. How could you hold on until now? Now, even I don't know how strong you are." Han Fei smiled. "What can I do? If I'm not strong, how can I win your favor?" Xia Shaochan rolled her eyes. "Don't be so smug. Don't think you're great just because you got the first place. I'm the second place, and I can surpass you in minutes." Han Fei grinned and said, "I believe you. Now you're better than me in one aspect." Xia Shaochan was puzzled. "What?" Han Fei's eyes revealed a trace of obscenity. "When you move." "Pooh. Cough cough." Han Fei suddenly raised his head and looked at the place where the kings were, and his face suddenly darkened. F***ck, who are these people? To the ears of others, it was very bad. Xia Shaochan was stunned for a while, but seeing the reaction of the kings, she suddenly blushed. "I'll bite you to death." Yan Meng glanced at Bai Yu, who couldn't hold back, rolled her eyes, and immediately took a step forward. Her crisp voice resounded through the void. "In this test, anyone who stays in the door for less than 10 seconds will be eliminated. The number of eliminated people is a total of 11,092. I don't need to tell you who exactly you are. The position you are standing in has already explained everything." Hiss! Suddenly, there was an uproar in the field. More than 10,000 people were eliminated in one go. Was she serious? However, the rules had always been set by the martial emperor city. Those who had been eliminated also realized that the second round of the trial was too difficult. Someone said regretfully, "Alas, I was just a little bit short. I was just half a second short and I made it." Someone shook his head. "Even if you can't make it, so what? After all, you're still not strong enough. There are a total of 6,164 people left. Which one of them is worse than you?" A half-king realm powerhouse saw that among the 6,164 people, there were some advanced venerables, even intermediate venerables and beginner venerables. At that time, he felt that it was unfair. However, this was not a test that only depended on strength, so those who failed could only give up. However, someone still raised a question. "Seniors, according to the time, why are there 4 doors? Why are there star marks on the golden beads?" As if she had expected someone to ask this question, Yan Meng replied indifferently, 4 doors means that the opportunities you encounter in different doors are completely different. However, for everyone, the difficulty doesn't change. It's divided into 4 doors to prepare for the third assessment. And the golden beads represent your luck. In the inheritance test of the invincible realm, luck is more important than strength. If you fail first, it means that your luck is only enough. That's all I have to say. Those who are eliminated must leave this place within 100 seconds. Yan Meng's explanation was quite cold. After teasing Xia Shaochan, Han Fei's heart slightly sank. Because in his mind, a new piece of information emerged. Name Invincible Eye Introduction. This is a kind of heaven-defying eye created by the road to the invincible realm. It's a strange divine eye that was born because there is no fear in the heart. When this eye is opened, it can trigger the strongest invincible intent, doubling its combat power, which is comparable to a divine skill. According to the strength of the cultivator, the effect varies when using it. Quality Tao level consumption chaotic gas note the stronger the strength, the less consumption. The effect of multiplying his strength greatly refreshed Han Fei. If his strength was multiplied, he would probably be able to fight a challenger king for real. However, what attracted Han Fei's attention more was the grade called Tao level. This was a grade that Han Fei had never seen before. Han Fei didn't know if this invincible eye was still the power of Tao, because the road to the invincible realm had dissipated and turned into the invincible heart and the invincible eye. But in any case, he made a fortune this time. Everyone thought that he had held on for such a long time, but who knew that he had defeated a martial emperor? When Han Fei came back to his senses, Yan Meng was saying, "The third trial is a secret realm trial, which tests comprehension. The whole trial is divided into a physical trial and a soul trial, lasting 26 days. Once the time is up, the secret realm itself will give an answer whether you pass or not. In the secret realm, you are not allowed to kill each other. I will observe the secret realm later. Anyone who violates this rule will be expelled from the secret realm immediately. From now on, you have 1 hour to rest. After 1 hour, the trial will continue." As soon as Yan Meng finished speaking, someone began to talk to each other via voice transmission. Someone said, "The third trial is known as the death trial. It is said that the passing rate is less than 1 in 100. Although there are more than 6,000 people here, in fact, only a few can pass the third trial." Someone gritted his teeth. "In any case, we've already come here. We have to give it a try. What if we succeed?" Some people encouraged secretly, and some sighed at the difficulty of this trial. Han Fei said, "Girl, I feel that this so-called trial is just a trial. The difficulty of the trial is extremely high. The third trial is a test of comprehension. I don't think it's very dangerous. The key is to think fast. You have to think about something that others don't dare to think about." Han Fei recalled the previous battles. Who could have thought that the road to invincibility was actually just the first step of the road to invincibility? Finding this road didn't mean completely comprehending the road to invincibility. It had a second form. Xia Xiaochan said lazily, "I know. Don't forget that my comprehension has always been higher than yours." Han Fei glared at her. "Who said that?" "When I was a child, I understood it as soon as you said it." Han Fei rolled his eyes. "Then what if I didn't say it?" Xia Xiaochan tilted her head. "If you didn't say it, I would have understood it later. Besides, since this is a secret realm, we can be together. Just say it and I'll definitely understand it." Han Fei thought, "That's true." Then, he slammed his head on Xia Xiaochan's head. "You have to use your brain too. What if I can't understand it?" Many mermaids and mermaids were enraged when they saw Han Fei's head being smashed. They didn't dare to say anything. "I'm a princess. How can you bully me?" But Xia Xiaochan seemed quite happy and didn't care at all. At that time, many mermaids and mermen felt uncomfortable. They had to break the taboo between the mermaids and the human race. It wouldn't be easy to deal with them in the future. 2 hours later, Zhang Luotian flicked his finger, and the mountains more than 10 kilometers away shook. One of the mountains actually split open, revealing a pitch-black path. Zhang Luotian shouted, "The third trial begin." Third trial. Please vote for me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1845. That mountain was originally an ordinary mountain. However, when people walked into the crack, they seemed to walk into an endless abyss towards the unknown. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan walked hand in hand. Since the third trial was a secret realm trial, the two of them naturally had nothing to worry about. Sure enough, when the two walked into the dark crack, their eyes lit up again. More than 6,000 people were standing on a cliff. In front of them was a dense forest. However, if they wanted to go to the other end, they had to pass through this cliff that was more than 10 kilometers long. It was reasonable to say that at the venerable realm, a mere 10 kilometers was nothing. However, since the level was set here, how could it be so easy to pass? between the gaps of the cliff, there was a visible wind current. The reason why it was visible was that the wind shook the void, causing the void to be unstable. This level was very suitable for people who cultivated the great way of wind. Therefore, in the crowd, Han Fei saw an acquaintance. He directly led a group of people and got up. This person was Li Xuanfeng of the Wind Cutter sect. Li Xuanfeng stepped into the wind, and his whole body turned into a blue light, swaying in the wind, like an erratic fallen leaf, swaying in the sky. Following Li Xuanfeng were naturally several disciples of the Wind Cutter sect. These people were roughly in the same situation as Li Xuanfeng, but their speed was not as fast as Li Xuanfeng. In less than 10 seconds, the blue light that Li Xuanfeng had turned into recondensed into a figure on the opposite cliff. He glanced back and then walked into the dense forest without looking back. After a while, when all the disciples of the Wind Cutter sect passed through the wind, many people also stepped into the air. Although what they cultivated was not the great way of wind, they should be able to handle this opening dish. However, when one of them just flew a few hundred meters, suddenly, his whole body swayed uncontrollably. Puff, puff, puff. Everyone could see that this person was pierced by the wind. This person roared, "There's something wrong with the space here." After that, this person's body seemed to be stuck. In the void, he couldn't borrow strength at all. Sometimes, he wanted to step on the wind blades and move forward. Unfortunately, his understanding of the great way of wind was too shallow, and he thought that he could step on the wind. As a result, his body was madly cut. In the end, this person fell off the cliff and was chopped into a mist of blood. Hiss, many people sucked in a breath of cold air. Will there be deaths at the beginning of the third trial? Why did this person die so easily? Fortunately, someone said, "Don't worry, I've never heard of a chance of dying on this path. This is just a simple trial. I reckon this person hasn't died yet." However, there weren't many people who agreed with this person, mainly because those involved in the situation couldn't see clearly. After witnessing something with his own eyes, there would always be some fear in his heart. Just now, 7 or 8 people had gone in a row. The furthest one had walked was only about 3,000 meters. In the end, they seemed to be bound by space and fell. Humph! At this moment, Li Xinghen walked out of the crowd, too lazy to wait. With a whoosh, he turned into a golden thread. Bang, 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 the wind barriers and the void shattered one after another along the way. In less than half a breath's time, he had already forcefully broken through the trial and arrived at the cliff. Hiss! Someone smiled bitterly. Is this the power of a heavenly talent? Breaking through the barrier was completely unreasonable. He directly broke through the barrier. With Li Xinghen leading the way, there were many people who forced their way through. Almost all of the experts swiftly flew past. Some people broke through, and some people showed their power. This first trial was not difficult. Most people with a little talent could pass the trial independently. Even if some people were weak, they called more people to break through together. In just a moment, among the more than 6,000 people, less than 200 people fell off the cliff, and the others all passed. And Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan were still standing leisurely behind, waiting. Xia Xiaochan said, let's go too." Han Fei said, "I don't think it's that simple." Xia Xiaochan was confused. "Huh." Han Fei said, "Don't forget, this test lasts as long as 26 days. That is to say, the entire inheritance of the invincible realm and all the time of the trial are here. The time of the last trial is only 1 day. It can be seen that this trial is very important. Since it's said that this trial is a test of comprehension, then there might be a reason for everything that's happening here." Xia Xiaochan's heart did a flip. "You mean the appearance of this cliff is also for us to comprehend something?" Han Fei nodded. "Of course. Otherwise, what's the point of its existence? Is it just to intercept those 100 or 200 people?" Xia Xiaochan shook her head. "I haven't learned the great way of wind." Han Fei said, "Most people haven't walked this road. However, this trial just happened to appear here. I think there's something wrong here. Shall I go and have a try? Xia Xiaochan nodded. It's safe for me to go. Han Fei asked, what can you comprehend by flashing all the way? It's up to me. With that, Han Fei stepped into the cliff. When he entered this open space on the cliff, Han Fei felt how strong the wind was. Although there were no wind blades, Han Fei still felt that his body was creaking because of the friction. When Han Fei took the sea-shaking wind bead, he had already comprehended the great way of wind. To be honest, it only improved his speed by less than 10%. Of course, this was also because he didn't study this great way in depth. Otherwise, the effect wouldn't be bad no matter which path he took. At this moment, Han Fei keenly grasped the location of every wind force. He stepped on the void and walked on the wind. And when the wind raged, the direction of the wind contained infinite changes. Almost immediately, Han Fei understood that in the fast-flowing wind, the wind was not a whole. The airflow itself could actually be disassembled into countless wind bundles, and the wind bundles would be consumed at every moment and every stage of space. As long as he grasped the wind's consumption, he could move freely in the wind. Xia Xiaochan watched from the outside. Then she saw Han Fei suddenly turned into an unfamiliar shadow, and it seemed that the entire cliff was filled with Han Fei's blurred figure. Of course, Xia Xiaochan was not stupid. She was also fast. After seeing Han Fei's footsteps, she was a little confused. Didn't they say that there was also a problem with space? When Han Fei appeared on the other side, he looked back at Xia Xiaochan. Do you understand? Xia Xiaochan nodded. Wait for me. After a while, when Xia Xiaochan reached the other side of the cliff, she said in surprise, there is no problem with space. The person who fell down was just talking nonsense. Han Fei said, it's not nonsense. It's just that he didn't understand it. The pressure of the wind forces the void, giving him the feeling that two kinds of great ways were exerting pressure on him. In fact, if he mastered the real wind walking method, there would be no space pressure. But this kind of test is just a kind of skill. After understanding it, I don't know what it's for. Xia Xiaochan said, forget it. There are only the two of us left. Let's catch up. Han Fei smiled. Believe it or not, they will come back. Han Fei said, no matter how stupid they are, they will find the problem. As soon as Han Fei said so, he saw Song Kaiyuan and the others slowly walking out of the forest. Looking at their posture, it was clear that they didn't go in at all but had been watching here secretly for a long time. When Han Fei passed by them, he said lightly, I've known it for a long time. Why did you wait until now? Song Kaiyuan said, yes, but I don't want to show it to those people. It's always a good thing that they understand it later. Because he knew that there were people watching outside, and he estimated that some people would come back to walk this cliff again, Han Fei didn't talk to them but walked straight into the forest. He didn't panic at all. This was a trial to test his completion rate. There was no point in rushing in blindly. Even though Han Fei and the others were a little slower, after a while, they also stepped into a pure black forest. In this forest, perception completely lost its effect. Gotcha! Han Fei accidentally stepped on a withered branch on the ground, and his pupils constricted immediately. F***ck, Han Fei knew that something was wrong and entered the array. When he turned his head and looked to the side, Xia Xiaochan was gone. At this moment, Han Fei didn't feel good. He knew that this kind of place that restricted perception was very strange. As a matter of fact, he had only taken a few steps when he entered an unknown formation. Besides, Han Fei felt the Tao of space, which meant that from the moment he stepped on the twig just now, he was no longer in the original position. Array? Han Fei looked around. In this darkness, the visibility was only about 5 meters. However, Han Fei saw a fiery red light, so he walked in the direction of the red light. After walking for about 30 meters, he found that it was a burning torch. It was stuck on a stone pillar. It seemed to be a special place for placing torches. Behind the torch was a withered tree, and Han Fei could vaguely see that there seemed to be a big hole in the withered tree. He immediately picked up the torch and approached, only to find that on the tree there was a big mouth open, and the big black hole in the mouth led to nowhere. Deliberately mystifying. Han Fei glanced at the torch in his hand and stepped directly into the tree hole. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1846. When Han Fei entered the tree hole, he actually broke into another darkness from one place of darkness. At this moment, Han Fei's perception was still blocked. The only thing Han Fei could do was to rely on the torch in his hand to illuminate this darkness. Of course, Han Fei also tried to burn spiritual energy, but found that spiritual energy couldn't be ignited in the darkness at all. He didn't know what was so special about this torch. It could actually play the role of illumination in this world of darkness. The coverage of the fire was actually not large, only 4 or 5 meters square, and it could slightly illuminate the scene more than 10 meters away. Han Fei felt that he suddenly stepped on the air. Yes, under his body became a cliff, and Han Fei completely stepped on the air. Not only did it become a cliff under his feet, but Han Fei also felt a heavy force on his shoulders. However, at the moment when his feet stepped on the air, Han Fei felt a trace of the power of the wind. Han Fei seemed to understand something. Han Fei held the torch in his hand and quickly stepped on the nodes in the wind. Only in this way could he keep his body from falling. However, the power of this wind was too light, almost to the point that it was almost imperceptible. If Han Fei hadn't just figured out how to step on the nodes where the wind disappeared, he would have fallen. At this moment, he was afraid that he could only fall. He didn't know what the consequences of falling would be, but this extremely weak wind seemed to be a life-saving straw. At this moment, although the breeze was relatively light, at least it was not scattered. The wind under his feet blew from all directions, but in one direction. As long as Han Fei grasped the direction of the wind, he would naturally be able to go to the place where he should go in this darkness. Sure enough, about a moment later, Han Fei saw a pillar with a torch. On that pillar there was an unlit torch. No matter how stupid Han Fei was, he understood this, so he simply lit the torch. When the torch was lit, there was no wind under Han Fei's feet, and the void became solid. He landed on the ground again. Interesting. Starting from the great way of wind, it becomes more and more difficult. This is much more difficult to walk than that cliff. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. Although it was more difficult here, it couldn't stop most people. Even though most of them had not truly comprehended the first trial, they were all paragons of the half-king realm. Han Fei couldn't help but look back, only to see a red dot far away on the way here. It looked like a burning flame. That was the path he had taken to get here. This meant that the path here could be taken back. At this moment, Han Fei didn't intend to turn around immediately. Since he was already here, why was he in such a hurry to go back? In this mystic realm, the test that everyone received was probably different. It was probably not a good thing to covet low risk. Han Fei believed that such a difficulty was absolutely no problem for Xia Shaochan. After all, they were all top-notch geniuses. Their talents, bloodlines, and battle prowess were not weak at all. In this kind of mystic realm trial, with the difficulty of the obstacles she had encountered so far, did they think they could stump her? The possibility was extremely low. Therefore, he did not need to worry too much. After weighing the pros and cons, he continued to move forward. When Han Fei raised his head and looked forward, he saw that the sparks on the torch were blown by the breeze. In this darkness where there was no direction at all, the direction in which the sparks flew was the only clue that Han Fei could refer to. Of course, Han Fei could use the nautical panorama to confirm it, but it was not necessary now. Following the direction of the sparks, Han Fei walked no more than 30 meters and saw another deformed tree. On the tree there was also a hideous big hole with a gaping mouth. In the hole, it was still dark. Han Fei entered again without hesitation. Fearlessness would only make Han Fei careful, but not afraid. With the experience from the last time, this time, as soon as Han Fei entered the tree hole, he immediately felt where the wind was. Sure enough, the environment was exactly the same as the last tree hole. There was still nothing under his feet, so he could only step on the breeze. But this time, some sword marks appeared in the air with a swish. These sword marks appeared silently, a bit like Xia Xiaochan's shadowless saber. In this place where perception was ineffective and visibility was almost less than 5 meters, the sword marks appeared too fast. Even Han Fei couldn't help but look nervous. In fact, these sword marks were not pointing at Han Fei himself, but at the torch in Han Fei's hand. Since Han Fei understood the importance of the torch, how could he let these sword marks extinguish the torch? Once the torch was extinguished, this trial would come to an end. Clank, clank, clank. With a thought from Han Fei, the infinity water flew out and directly formed a knife array, sealing the space around the torch. Soon, Han Fei lit a new torch on a new stone platform. The breeze came again, blowing the flickering sparks and continuing to lead the way for Han Fei. And Han Fei had a judgment in his heart. This was a trial with increasing difficulty. In this trial, every time a torch was lit, it was equivalent to completing a small stage of the trial. However, when would such a trial end? Why was the beginning based on the comprehension of the wind? If the opponent didn't comprehend it at the beginning, then when the difficulty reached the extreme, wouldn't it be impossible to play? When Han Fei entered the next tree hole, he found that it was true. In front of him, it was still the same routine as before, but this time there were creatures attacking in the dark. Another tree hole with a divine soul attack. Han Fei kept passing levels. The difficulty of the levels became higher and higher, including all kinds of attack method. Han Fei had to pay attention to his footwork, protect the torch, fight with others, and pay attention to soul attacks. In the end, it even began to rain. Han Fei felt that the torch in his hand was just an ordinary torch. What if it got wet? It would probably be extinguished directly. Han Fei wanted to protect the torch with a spiritual energy protective cover. However, the protective cover didn't work. Fortunately, Han Fei could also control water. As soon as the water was under control, the great wave of water began to spread in the water over there. The water under Han Fei's control was all frozen into frost and finally turned into ice blades. Han Fei's spiritual sense was so powerful that he could control the ice blades at will. Under the various tests, Han Fei passed 17 levels all the way. When he came to the 18th level, Han Fei felt that if the difficulty continued to increase, he really didn't know whether or not he could go deeper and further when many abilities were restricted. No wonder some people said that the third level of the trial was a death trial. Han Fei dared to bet that no more than 1/10 of the more than 6,000 people could make it here. On the 18th level, when Han Fei continued to walk into the tree hole, this time, the environment was a little beyond Han Fei's expectations. Han Fei was still holding the torch in his hand. However, it was no longer the void under his feet, so he didn't feel like falling. However, Han Fei sensed an extremely strong sense of danger. Han Fei subconsciously blocked it with a knife. Swish! When the sword light swept over, Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Time seemed to freeze. In Han Fei's eyes, there was only the sword light. In an instant, Han Fei seemed to see a lot of power. It seemed to be a combination of many Daos. The sword Qi seemed to contain the Tao of wind, with infinite changes, and it was difficult to grasp its direction. The sword Qi also seemed to contain the Tao of water. If this sword Qi was broken in an instant, it would instantly explode, lock on him, and put out the torch. The sword Qi also seemed to contain a method to attack the soul. This sword Qi was obviously an unbelievably slow lock-on technique. This sword Qi was very slow, so slow that it was only 5 meters away. Han Fei could circle around it several times. However, this was a lock-on technique. Its power, while moving, was continuing to increase. The longer it was delayed, the more powerful it would be. Han Fei's eyelids twitched a few times. Han Fei stretched out his hand, drew in the air, and a crack appeared in the void. However, when the sword chi arrived, there was a cracking sound. The void shattered and turned into a strange energy that was directly absorbed by the sword chi, causing its power to increase once again. Han Fei was still half a meter away from this sword. Han Fei's fingers were moving left and right of the sword chi. If it was just to break this attack by force, Han Fei was confident that he could do it. However, he was still holding the torch in his hand. In this darkness, he couldn't connect to the demon purification pot at all. Naturally, the torch couldn't be stored in the demon purification pot. At this moment, in the outside world, a few pairs of eyes were watching this scene. Who else could it be but Zhang Luotian and the others? One of them, a bearded man, couldn't help but say, "This kid passed the levels very fast. In less than half a day, he passed 17 levels in a row. The problem is that he hasn't failed yet. He doesn't even know that he can try again." Bai Yu sneered. "Are you interested in him?" The bearded man nodded slightly. "It's useless for me to be interested in him. This fellow was not a small fry to begin with. It's said that although he is now half a king, he has fought many kings. Although he hasn't won, he hasn't lost yet, right?" As he spoke, he glanced at Yenmeng. Yenmeng said, "If he can pass the tribulation and become a king, the Yinyang heaven will definitely have a chance to return. The problem is that even if he manages to stall Chun Huangdian, there are still experts in the 36 Xuantians. There are many people who don't want to return to the Yinyang heaven. I'm afraid it won't be easy for him to return to the Yinyang heaven." Zhang Luotian said, "If his completion rate is as high as 95%, why won't he be able to return to the Yinyang heaven?" Everyone couldn't help but look at Zhang Luotian. Such a high completion rate has never been seen before. "Why do you think so highly of him?" Zhang Luotian said casually, "It's not that I think highly of him, but that he is extremely lucky. Besides, he is extremely strong. It's been 80,000 years, and he came at the time when the imperial palace was born. Do you think? Is this a coincidence or something else?" Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter.